So what we're doing now is we're gonna go through the sections of the budget where, let me step back. My goal was to try to find opportunities for savings, and all we did this morning was spend more money. So, we have to check ourselves a little now and sort of, we made some commitments and those are quite good, but we also want to look through the budgets and see where there might be some savings. Remember, I think we set a goal, I'm trying to get us close to $600,000 in offset from what we were presented, and so that's a long shot. However, let's just try to see what we can do to do our best. So, purpose of this afternoon is to go through some conversation with each section, go through a couple of them. The Board of Education is represented today now, so we might start with the Board of Education and just highlight some of the thoughts that we had there, and then move ourselves through. I'm thinking Public Works is probably the next significant place to have some dialogue, and then anything else that we have there. Ideally, we'll be able to get through all this and set a mill rate, big picture plan. Okay, so Board of Ed, they are located on tab, help me out, Cindy.
Tab 3.
So I'm going to begin with the Board of Ed and share some insights. I want to state that, one, our Board of Ed has done a very good job of not only really providing the quality education they do for our students, but being very reasonable in terms of growing their programs, but being sensitive to our expenses. And so in reviewing their budgets and some of the things, I didn't see a lot of opportunity, given their contractual obligations, for real big savings. So rather than go through their budgets line by line and say, you don't need this, you pay too much for that, I spoke with the chair and said, there's two things that I'm thinking I'd really like to talk about. The first is, one of the items that was presented was the human resource person part-time. And there were a number of questions that we asked, and in my belief, justified. And at this point, I also think that some aspect of human resources is really important. So I asked if they would indulge the idea of not just providing human resources for the Board of Education, but to consider using that within the realm of shared services, and then provide those human resource services to the entire town. Because from what I'm learning from the Selectman's office, the same challenges exist there as well. And so they were in agreement with that. I think the fact bringing this position forward was a good initiative, and they brought it to the forefront, and I think we should consider addressing it. With that said, I know that a number of us came about with approaches that we can take to get us there. And do we try to look at outsourcing? Do we try to hire somebody part-time? We didn't really know what it looked like. Do we, frankly, even have full-time? And what would that budget amount? Brian was able to come up with a number based on a good guess estimate, but I think we have to at least try. And so his number was $75,000, and I'm proposing shifting, and we have to discuss the amount, but shifting that over to shared services to a foreign and the Board of Selectmen. But I do want to discuss maybe alternatives of what we might want, how we might want to implement that, and present that to the Board of Selectmen and the Superintendent of Schools, or I guess that's where it falls. How much money and how do we get it implemented? We talked about outsourcing some of it. We don't know exactly all the things that we need yet, so we didn't want to just budget all that money and just say, we're just going to have somebody sit at a desk. We want to have certain problems solved. So I'm going to open that discussion up among ourselves to see what we're thinking in terms of how much money we should do. Do we do the entire 75? Do we look at maybe funding a little less, maybe 50 this year, with the anticipation that we're going to try to get this up and running? And I'm going to change the direction this afternoon and start with you, Todd.
Yes.
You have a lot of insights on this topic and
Yes.
what we're thinking. So first of all, I'm asking if you guys are in agreement. The first question is, are you in agreement with shifting it over to shared services? And if so, I guess there's three courses of action. Do we not do a human resource person? And if we do, how do we do that human resource? And number three, do we shift it over to shared services? I just want to know if that makes sense. Shared services means it's going to be someone providing services to the entire town.
Right, I think the need is between, over the entire town, between town government and board of education, so a total number of employees. But I personally think that we shouldn't jump in and hire somebody right now. We should hire a consultant, HR firm that will help us look at our organization, what we can do with other people we have now, and then figure out whether or not we need a full-time person at this point. So I'd like to do that, rather than jump in and hire a person right away. I think we want to get some intelligence of what we really need. Like I sense that the organization can probably help out with that, and we can perhaps live without an HR person full-time for a while, or if we clearly identify that we need one. I have a hard time
I have
justifying.
to just check you on one thing. I just want to make sure everyone's clear. They nor I am looking for, recommend a full-time person. That budget was for a half-time person.
All right. Okay.
That was what the presentation was based upon. And so, and I also want to ask you, and all the board members to consider that we're not looking, we got to remember what we're doing is we're just putting monies aside. So we're impacting this. It may or may not get spent, but we have to provide the funding. We can't come in and say, all right, we want to hire a consultant for lack of a better number, $15,000. And then later find out that that consultant recommends hiring somebody for the extra $60,000. And so we won't be able to have the funds to implement that unless we appropriate the full 75 right now. Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm in agreement that we ought to take a thoughtful approach on how to implement it. I think that they ought to be in the position to understand our what we're giving them as guidance, and but we have to give them the means to do it. We can't just put in the 15, hire the consultant, and then come back with us. That will extend the problem out 2 years.
I would like them to, just as you said, I would like them to hire a consultant, figure out what we need to do, and then if necessary, go do it. And maybe we should provide the 75K so they can go the full mile, but I'd like to have them get knowledge first.
Okay.
Knowledge before hiring.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
I'd agree with that, appropriate the 75.
Any other comments? I didn't mean to just move on.
No, that's pretty much it.
Now, can we consider any savings in this? Do we do the full 75, or do we maybe look at 50? Or do we look at another number? We're sort of shooting out there, and we're looking for some little bit of savings here too. So that's really where my question is: what's going to get us through the job? By the time they implement this person, do they need the full year of 75? It's ultimately going to be somewhere in that 75. It's not unreasonable, but do we do the full amount right now? And that's a question. It's not a direction. What are you thinking, Harvey? I'd like your thought on that.
I asked, well, maybe I shouldn't. I would think that in proposing to have a human resources specialist on board, that what they're going to have to do, that their duties are pretty much already defined. I suppose it wouldn't hurt to have an outside eye cast on that, some consultant for a bit, but I'd be inclined to put 75 in the budget, but only on the condition that the question that you left to last gets satisfied. It is a position that services both the Board of Ed and the town side of government. Okay. That only makes sense to me.
One other thing, and maybe we can put this, this would be my general direction, is I want to reserve the money also. I do want, and while a consultant will evaluate your present needs and show you what you need, I also would like for us to consider outsourcing whatever we can, and at least investigating the outsourcing
Yeah, I agree.
of the HR services. Only familiar with this on the private sector where I see people doing these outsourcing and they save considerable money because they're bulking
I
it up.
agree.
So that's the only aspect of it that I would like to include, but in that manner, I'm okay with moving that full amount over as well. All right, so we're in agreement with that. We're just gonna shift that, Cindy, over to the shared services. Additionally, and I can invite Brian to elaborate more, but again, the Board of Education has been very, very cooperative with us. So I asked if they could come in and look at some additional cuts in their budget, and without going into the detail and saying, I want you to do this or do that, I just said, can you help me here? And they were very, very generous. Now, they weren't able, they have to work among themselves, but I'll invite Brian to maybe elaborate a little more about his process, but I believe they think they can probably help us with about $100,000 in cut from what they're presenting to us tonight, or today. Would you like to?
I can explain on the process. Obviously, the Board of Finance will come up with a number today or whenever, soon. And let's say if it is $100,000. From there, then the next step is that Superintendent Reese will go to the subcommittee of planning and business and planning subcommittee. They'll work on some numbers of where the Board of Ed needs to cut the $100,000. Then from there, then it gets to the Board of Ed to agree on that before the public hearing. So Superintendent Reese, I guess, feels, there's where, it's gonna be difficult because over the last 9 years, we've been coming under contractual obligations, which means we're cutting more than what we have to pay out on our contracts. But he feels, there's ways where we can take that and look at and reduce the 100,000. And he'll have the recommendations. He may not have it here today.
Right, I essentially threw this upon him, so I know he's looking into the details.
Right.
However, I just wanna point out they're not fighting with us, but we're willing to work with us in that
Yeah,
capacity.
and that's out of the operating.
And I'm not sure you guys were aware, this is a little bit of a side, but we just also had the conversation of the funding on the SRO, so we voted to put into our contingency the funding for what would be for the full-time officers. So I just want you to know that we ended up doing that earlier today. So it's in our contingency, in the finance board contingency, we're allowing the selectman's office to do what they're gonna do, but we'll have the resources available. Okay, so therein, it was a big deal, right? We just received 100,000. Now, let's talk about their capital plan and some of the ideas that we shared there.
Tab 5, starting at page 24. So what you see as you walk through here, just to give the process, it totals up to 470,000 in the request column, and the Board of Selectmen reduced it by 120,000 to a net of 350. So as you're looking at the detail, the Board of Ed's gonna have to come up with 125,000 in cuts to get to the Board of Selectmen's recommendation, unless other adjustments are made.
Well, I don't know why, I'm a little bit lost right now,
Yeah,
Cindy.
so am I.
Tab 5.
Mhm.
So if you go to the very last page in tab 5, the Board of Ed's request comes to 470,000, and the Board of Selectmen recommended 350. Just to
So that's
remind
page
you-
31?
Yeah,
Okay.
just to remind you, as you look through the detail, that all of their requests total up beyond what the Board of Selectmen recommended.
And then what did the Board of Selectmen cut out of their capital that we should be?
Traditionally, the boards of selectmen and finance have not cut the Board of Ed capital. They've given it back to the Board of Ed and said, this is what we're funding you, and you appropriate it based on your priorities. You haven't gone line by line, you've left it to the Board of Ed.
So they just kind of did what we're discussing on the operating side too, so it's been turned back. Can you share with us then, if your proposed capital plan is greater than what the Board of Selectmen is allocating, right? There's a delta between what the Board of Selectmen said and what they requested, right, Cindy? Do you know how you're going, what you're gonna cut?
So I think we have a few options to cut. We were assuming, and part of the reason this is done differently, and I know you know this, but it's important to kind of keep it as a reference point. Part of the reason we have this conversation a little differently is that, for instance, if the parking lot, if it's your druthers to kind of put that into a different section and say that's not out of our operating part of our capital budget, which I know is very confusing to say, that changes this number. So in a previous conversation in this room, we were talking about, well, what if that went to bonding? That takes this out. And so that's why this conversation is a little more fluid than the operating. And I know you know that. So we have some opportunities. There is a truck that, we may put off replacing. There are, the board needs to kind of come up with a final estimate, but there are some, there were some opportunities that, not to do as much carpet this year at the middle school. That's an opportunity that we could look at. There's the possibility of moving the hot water tanks to the following year, push some of that work off. And there's a variety of those things that we have an opportunity to do. So the board, would take the amount and go back and say, all right, what are the final priorities? That's kind of
All right, so I almost want to take this question and shift a little bit. Maybe Cindy, you can give us some color. So when the Board of Selectmen looked at the budget, do you know what logic they used to say what they didn't want to spend? So I see, for instance, redo high school baseball field. Were they intentionally cutting that? Were
They were not making.
They were not making any recommendations at all? Okay.
They were leaving it to the board as has been done in the past. They just were going to the bottom line.
They just cut the money. And it's a choice of the Board of Ed what to do with the cut money, or without the cut money.
How they're gonna, and was there any logic on how they came to that conclusion?
I don't think so. I mean, just again, trying to get to the bottom line. In the past, the board of ed's been funded at $200,000. I know they talked about the driveway parking lot being a critical component.
So let's just, for our discussion, assume that the Board of Selectmen put together, we're not gonna argue what they brought forward. Let's now talk within the capital plan, how they're spending the money and how we could look at it alternatively. So for instance, that parking lot was the big ticket item that I saw. If we don't put it in their operating budget and we look at alternate funding for that, that's a savings of $225,000 for the 1 year. Now, since we did this, would you be able to and this will be helpful for us with some of the other capital things that we're looking at, would you share the process of what we did with the high school roof and how it might be applicable here as well?
So there was discussion about bonding. And if you recall, although we're not bonding for the high school roof, the appropriations were all done at a town meeting. And in the past, when we've done even open space, and many of you who've been around a long time will know the motion would to town meeting and sometimes referendum would read to expend X amount, and then with the understanding there'd be bonding or grants. So one opportunity you could do for the driveway parking lot is take it to a town meeting and indicate that you'd like to appropriate X amount and to be replenished to the general fund at such time we bond. So that wouldn't necessarily be a referendum item, but we could move it over to the bonding side. So it wouldn't hold up getting, it wouldn't prevent them from getting the parking lot done sooner rather than later, but, and it wouldn't require a referendum as well. So
It would or would not?
You wouldn't have to take it to the town meeting. And bond council would have to do the wording just so that we could bond for it in the future. We'd have to make sure the
But given the dollar value on it, my curiosity is there's probably a threshold of bonding that it becomes with bond counsel and all the other costs involved, it becomes not so sensible to bond a smaller scale
And
project.
that's why the timing now is ideal, because we have a short-term note, a bond anticipation note, right now for $5.4 million, which we are going to roll forward again in June, so we could tack that right into there, once it was approved at town meeting. So it wouldn't have to stand on its own, I think we discussed the same thing with the envelope, because we do have short-term debt out there, it could be blended into the debt for the remaining debt for this building, the firehouses, the radios, and the elementary school. So we wouldn't be incurring additional costs, they would just be added into something we already have in place.
So this is a departure from our conversation the other day, when we say we're gonna package this along with the envelope and look at that down the road. This is, in effect, accelerating it, almost keeping it onto the same timeline that the Board of Education wants for the resurfacing of the parking lot. We would be doing this right away, but we wouldn't put it in the operating budget. We would probably include it in the bonding that we're about to do.
What you would have to do is, similar to the high school roof, if you wanted to move forward with it, it would have to go through the Board of Selectmen, through the Board of Finance to recommend a town meeting an special appropriation. And the resolution would have to include that it could be bonded for in the future, and then it would be an amendment to this year's budget, and they could move forward with it right away.
And then the terms of what we're anticipating doing with the bonding, what is the scope of the project that we're probably bonding and you said those bands are rolling over, so we're gonna be bonding those long-term, how much?
We won't be bonding those for a while. It's $5.4 million. We need to add some open space to that we've been carrying. We could add the driveway. Ultimately, down the road, you could add the envelope. I don't foresee us issuing a bond for that for the earliest 12 months. It'd probably be 18 to 24 months.
So in theory, and I just wanna make sure our board members and the public know this, we're not talking about taking out a lot of debt. We're just talking on some additional debt to get enveloped in here and then solve the problems of things that we already committed to, the envelope, the driveway, all these other things. But spreading them out over a long time horizon and using bonding that keeps the interest rate rather low. And knowing that, and we don't know this yet because Bill hasn't responded yet, but knowing that we're gonna be taking some debt off of our plate when issues come mature. And so the impact will be not really raising the mill rate at all as a result of these projects.
Not likely.
Okay.
And you don't normally have this opportunity. If we weren't in the midst of the other projects, we wouldn't have this short-term money sitting there. Because obviously you wouldn't wanna borrow for,
Not for 225.
yeah.
Okay, so that's the discussion. I'm gonna now go around here to see if we have any questions. My recommendation is we pull that number out, 225, and include it in, in the process that Cindy just articulated. Do you have any discussion on that? Questions?
It's a tremendous opportunity.
I have a question about the parking lot itself. I just noticed this, 225, the parking lot, crack, fill, and seal parking lot. It's gonna be 225,000 to do that?
No, the 225 is to replace the parking.
Remill it, so to speak?
So there was a conversation.
Yeah, that
and
makes
I
more
think
sense.
That's a combination of, at first we thought we could crack seal, but yeah, after having it looked at by professionals, they said, you're wasting your money, so it changed at that point, so.
Yeah.
I think what you wanna understand also, just so you're not wondering what the gap is, these financial notes have been compiled by our finance director. She does her best effort in terms of telling us exactly what it is. She may not have known that level of detail.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, so that's our thought, right? And on Board of Ed, we're gonna move that over, so there's another 225 that we can,
So just for procedure for the Board of Education, what have you, what I would recommend is the next time we have a town meeting, we need this board and the Board of Selectmen to take action, but we can move on this and get this done within the next,
in their time horizon that they're proposing for us this
so
year.
that they could do it over the summer. And this was something, and I know this is new to Brian, and I apologize, Bill and I were really brainstorming, and it was like, this is the way we can do this, and
we're trying to find ways to save money and get the work done.
So practically in the big picture, the state has changed their theory on envelope, and that means a positive $200,000 in terms of reimbursement. So all the windows involved are fully, or we get full 50.7% instead, and that's a $200,000 increase in the state reimbursement. So-
That's great news.
So in terms of your long-term big picture, it's really a flat bonding.
That's
This is true, because we just replaced that 200,000, done.
That's great.
Sometimes waiting a little bit worked out in our favor.
Okay, so as we're pursuing my goal of trying to find some savings to offset the mill rate, now we're at 325, correct?
Yes,
In savings?
Yes,
in reduction.
some reduction.
Well, sort of, because you added money back in.
No, I'm just, we're not talking net. You'll do the net numbers for us. I'm just talking about reduction. We have to talk, we added some money, and I agree.
Yeah, you have 400,000 saved, 420,000 total. You have 100,000 for Board of, no, oh. 100,000 for Board of Ed, you're right, 225 for Board of Ed parking lot, and 20,000 for capital reserves for the fire department. Those are your reductions so far.
Okay, I forgot about that. That's why I'm asking you to record this.
Because the 75 for HR nets itself out, it's a reduction in one place, and then
Okay.
an increase in another.
Okay, anything else on capital with Board of Ed that you have questions on? Team? Board of Ed, any questions of us?
No, I really appreciate the back and forth in terms of trying to work through it. I appreciate the comments. We really are trying to, work as on the independent work we need to do and try to be part of the town in a positive way. Really appreciate that. And the selectmen gave us the same opportunity as well. We appreciate that. So, thank you.
Thank you too. So, great, we're done with Board of Ed at this time. Let's now get into where all the fun begins. Let's go to Public Works.
And we start with operating and capital.
You know what? Let's keep things on the positive tone and talk about capital.
Start with page 10,
Page 10 and tab 5.
section 5.
So, one of the things that I want to discuss on Public Works is, and we got some great, for those of you present from Thursday, having Beth here, I think, was really helpful for us, because it gave us some insights that we didn't really expect, and I think it really was a huge benefit for all of us. And I want to preface this because this is kind of the thinking that I have. The first and foremost item on the list was, as I listened to both Beth explain her process of where she was going and what we were talking about as a board in terms of trying to get things done more sooner than later, it occurred to me that, maybe we have to approach it a little bit differently than what was presented. In other words, there's not enough hours, so we have to almost help her do some triage. Now, we invited Beth to provide us a list. Did she give us that list?
Yes, I'm sorry. I will print that for you. Wasn't in the office yesterday to get that for this morning.
And it's okay if you even just read us the list of the projects that she says that are really important, but
I can put it on the screen if you want.
that would be ideal, that would be perfect. Where I'm kind of thinking is, and this was based on some of the feedback I received from some of our members, the idea of trying to get if we could get these roads, these FEMA projects underway quicker than what is planned, we were able to, like, we had a magic wand, we would just get all those roads, everything repaired from the storms in September. There'd be two benefits. One would be, it would improve the quality of life in our town, it would make it less, I think there may be some safety issues at some point, but it's definitely an inconvenience and a problem. And it would relieve a ton of stress that's going on the Department of Public Works. In our view, given what she shared with us, there's not enough, even though we're trying to do it in kind, which makes a lot of sense given the FEMA calculations, it's taking so much away from the other work that we do, that we're not able to do that, and now we have to hire people to do those other jobs. So that caused us to pause and rethink this and consider maybe we should outsource these road projects and then have our public works employees work on the things that they do, to include the trees. Am I pretty much in agreement with your observations there? That was sort of the impression that we got later on.
Right.
So with that in mind, because that was not the course of action I was pursuing originally, and I'm not sure anyone else there, but given the feedback, I gave that some thought, and I said, okay, Cindy, let's go down and let's look at the math, let's see what we can do, because remembering that, if the amount of risk that we have here is $3.7 million, and you asked the question, Todd, how much of that would be the bridge and the places that need special engineering? I'm gonna use rough estimates, but let's just say 700,000 of that was big ticket kind of items like Neptune Avenue. That leaves $3 million. Of that $3 million, we only have to come up with 25% of it, and then the rest of the jobs are done. So if we rethink this and say, okay, let's kind of maybe target that number, right? If we've covered $3 million, maybe what our goal really would be to do is to come up with $750,000, and we get all our roads done in 2019. Or let's come up with an even lower number, and if we have to come up with the whole amount, and we get it done within the next 2 years, and we outsource the entire amount. Is that a line of reasoning that you all agree we should pursue?
Yep.
So Cindy, we did go through that, and I know I asked you to put up the slide with her too, so maybe you could just reduce that for now. I just want to ask you, going on that same discussion, because then we'll look at this project list, because I think we've received some opportunity here too. If we pursue that course of action and we're going to try to come up with that, how could we potentially do that with the cash flow that we have? How could we come up with money? Let's say we did need to do $3 million. What were some of the thoughts that you had before? We weren't going to bond for that, but we're going to get most of that money back. So in essence, we have to come up with a small amount. What were your thoughts on some of that? Moving some money from some other capital projects perhaps that we might have left over?
Hiring contracted services, you don't have the benefit of in-kind to offset it. But in looking at the public works capital budget, Bone Mill Bridge came in well under what was projected. So I estimate you have about $200,000 there you could repurpose, which we had discussed at a prior meeting.
All right, so I'm going to put a pause on that. So that's 200 more to the positive that we were looking at, checking off our box. So what do we say, 3? Now we're up to 5 what? 525?
Yes.
540.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, 545, that's right.
545, okay, good.
You're there, correct. So that's an option for some match, but if you,
And then we also have 200 already expended for services rendered in kind. So we would get 75% of that back.
or, correct, yes.
So there's
There
ideally
is some cash flow.
in this budget year, we should get, that's 150,000, we should receive that in this budget year.
Correct.
If we were to fund all of the projects, do we have to come up with all the money all at once? When would the bill come due?
So because these are grants, you're going to have to accept them at town meeting. So if you appropriate a certain amount, so you have a start of 200,000 with Bone Mill that you could use to help fund some of this. You're gonna have to take the grant to town meeting, and in the past when we've done it, it's been under 100,000 or around 100,000. This is certainly not of that nature. So if you, in this budget, determine a certain amount of money you want to set aside for a FEMA match, if she begins to run out when you take the grant to town meeting, then you would ask for that appropriation as well. Be kind of confusing, but you're going to have to take these grants to town meeting, and I envision taking them in chunks of projects.
So to make sure we all understand this well, can you give us a dollar example? It doesn't have to be the real dollars, but just use 500,000 or 100,000. Use an example of how this actually works.
So for the part we're about to get confirmation of what we're receiving, we would say we've expended X dollars, so let's make up a number, $100,000. And we had 10,000 in kind, and FEMA's giving us 75,000, so we have to appropriate 15. That's how it would work. So we would show the difference. But when you're going back to contracted piece, you're not gonna have an in-kind to match to that. The most you'll have is some administrative costs that we can associate to that for Beth and the selectmen and finance office. So you're not gonna have that whole in-kind.
So pretend, and again, we're not pursuing this course of action, but I just wanna get the numbers. So pretend we wanted to do all 3 million right now. Remember, 700,000 is the special project. We wanna do all 3 million right now. How would that work? We would have to put the whole 3 million aside?
You would budget the full 3 million, but then you'd budget the revenue piece to offset it. So you would, to call your attention, might be easier to the summary total of capital. You see the total of all capital costs, and then I show you the revenue sources.
What page are you on?
Page
Page one?
under the table of contents. So when you're looking at that, you see the grand total of capital, and then we show you all the funding sources. So in this instance, I would increase public works expense by 3 million, and then show 75% of 3 million coming in as a grant to offset it.
All right, so just to make sure I understand your chart here, would you walk me through the actual numbers here, and then I wanna.
Sure. So if you look in the request column for this year, you see the grand total by each programmatic area.
And a total of
Right, so
1.546.
then when we come down, we say we have state grants of 414,000, 30,000 from the Lakes Reserve, 18 in that Rathbun Trust proceeds, and 11,000 in savings from other capital projects. So the general fund support for taxation for capital is 1,071,000. So if I was to factor the FEMA in, I factor the 3 million in the request.
So that would take this number and make it 4.5 million.
Correct.
And then on the bottom, there would be a corresponding
75% of
75, 230 million, 2.3 million.
Right, and then you would take, for the town's match, because now we have to find 700,000, you could say 200,000 savings in Bone Mill will get you there. And then perhaps there's other money within Public Works Capital that she's indicated she can't get to everything, so maybe some of that you would allocate to FEMA as well.
Is that math, is that clear now to all of you how that works? How we would do that? So if we appropriate for the entire FEMA project right now, we would start by saying, okay, $3 million. And then correspondingly, based on what we have to tax for it, we subtract out the FEMA proceeds. And then we would look at, all right, in this case, I keep coming to like 750,000, so we're looking at that number, and we could subtract from it any savings in capital that she might have helped us achieve by, Bone Mill as an example. We'd only have to come up with so much, and we could use some unassigned balance.
You could use some unassigned fund balance, or you could use some money in her capital plan.
Okay, so those are two sources of money we can use to do that. Now, where I'm thinking, and again, this is driven by some of the feedback you've shared with me, by eliminating the stress of having to do all those roads in kind, now our public works people don't have to hire new staff because they're looking to hire temporary people because they can't get to all the work. There's not enough man hours involved in doing all the work. We have to find a way to outsource it. So we've eliminated that basic need. And they basically go on, I don't know that they have to, I know they have some personnel issues relative, speaking, they're losing some staff for health issues and whatnot. But that's kind of normal course of action. They're not gonna have to go in and hire more people. So is that correct? I just wanna make sure. So we're saving her money in that end because she won't have to hire temporary staff.
Right. I'm just building it into the capital plan to flow it through so you can see.
All right, so as you do that, exercise. I'd like to have some dialogue on this to see if we're pursuing a course we ought to really pursue. I'm gonna start with you, because you look like you have a question.
Well, I don't remember us getting an answer, I don't remember asking the question. Can Public Works get the normal, everyday work done with the staff in place, given, you know, the vacation times and the sick leave and so forth? I don't believe we ever asked that question. I don't think we thought of it, or I didn't think of it at least. In other words, does she need temporary help just to get her
Anyway.
through her normal routine? I don't know the answer to that, so if she were to say, yeah, I'm good with the help I have, then we only have to worry about the contracted stuff, but I don't wanna not fund if she needs help to get the
Well, I
regular work
think,
done.
I think her staffing issues are temporary, correct? We're looking at temporary staffing issues. And then the trees caused an additional amount, and we're gonna have to talk about the trees, but,
Well, and she indicated that she couldn't put people on trees and on FEMA.
but if she didn't have FEMA, she could probably do the trees.
Those short staff numbers you saw were without FEMA, and, she's gonna still struggle staff-wise, but then you take FEMA off her plate.
I want you to restate that. So if we eliminate FEMA, will she be struggling with staff?
Yes, she'll still be struggling with staff.
And that's because of trees or because of staff deficiencies? You know, people out on leave.
Both.
When those people return, will she be,
It
she'll be stressed, but she'll be able to get the job done?
Yeah. I think she'll do the best she can. I don't mean to be vague, but based on her presentation, she's still gonna struggle with staff, but you're taking,
Will she have any money in her operating budget to hire temporary staff? Does she build any of that in here?
only for the usual summer.
All right, so maybe we consider,
When you say usual summer,
About $9,000, and
but that, let me see if I can think straight here. She's got people, she's got the situation during the summer where her people, that's the only time of the year they can take time off, because they gotta plow and so on. And she's got some people who are, apparently, one or more people who are gonna be on long-term disability, or at least an extended sick
Medical.
leave. Yeah.
they're gonna be on leave, we'll just call it that.
Yeah, so, and you're saying that she did build in $10,000 to hire temporary folks to cover that?
no, we have usual summer help that runs around 9,000. A lot of what they do is weed whacking and tasks you wouldn't necessarily have the regular crew doing.
So nowhere in her budget
No.
is temporary staff to fill in for someone who's out for medical reasons or whatever.
Or additional staff to get the tasks done, no.
All right, so we're kind of going in the direction of operating, and I know we have to go there. Let's see if we can, and I want to come back to this. Let's see if we can find you found 200,000 with the bone mill. Let's see if we can find other projects that she won't be able to complete in this budget cycle that we can reappropriate to the FEMA and get us to that. Right now, I'm seeing that the number 750, we got 200, so I need to find 550. If we could find, whatever we could do to wick away at that, then we can look back at the unassigned fund balance later on to help offset that difference. But ideally, this would create a huge, it would give her a big gap. If we get this stuff moving, it'll help her out quite a bit.
So if you go to pages 12 and 13, and just to clarify on your temporary help, we do have some temporary help in place for people on medical leave. And the summer help, they're not CDL guys. We can't put them out onto something that a CDL regular employee could do. All right, so if you start page, there's the vehicles and hot box and stuff. I didn't know if you wanted to do anything with that.
Let's start with the projects first, and then we'll kind of chip away at some of those other items.
So I'm gonna.
And I just want to point out, we're not saying we're not going to do these projects. All we're saying is, we're not appropriating for those projects in this budget cycle, mainly because she can't get to them. She doesn't have the staff to do them. So instead of appropriating, we'll put them off, and then we'll get the money back next year from FEMA anyway, and we'll be able to do that.
So thing I wanna check on, because we budget, if you look, there's road improvement materials and pavement and shim overlay. And I just wanna see between.
Are you talking about 500 and 128? Those two numbers?
Talking 128 and 164.
Okay.
For the 500. This is an amount we appropriate every year, but I wanna see what she's got left this year, again, because of staffing challenges. So in this year's budget, she, between the two, had a revised budget of $582,000, and she's expended $74,000 of it.
Which category was that?
So if you come over to here, road improvement materials and above it pavement and shim overlay,
Mm-hmm.
projects numbers C10 and C11. That being said, you've indicated she can use some of that money towards the FEMA match. So she might tap into it a little, but she's got $500,000 left there, and she's asking for another
300.
300. And in the normal course of public works, taking out everything else that occurred, that's reasonable, but at the present time, it's a struggle for the department.
The 300's reasonable because there's other roads beyond the ones that were damaged by the FEMA, right? And that's the money she would need for that. But what about the 500 that she already has? What is that? Is that in, can we use that money for FEMA knowing that we're gonna get that money back also?
I caught you with saying knowing that we're gonna get it back, just so we're on the same page, because
Because we're netting that out when we do the
We're gonna net it
calculation.
out.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm
Just
not
wanna
thinking,
be-
I'm not thinking the full 300. We're only looking for 750
so
or 3 million.
So you might want to, look at what she's requesting next year and what she has this year. And I'm not a fan of special appropriations, although I just recommended one for the driveway. If things pick up and she can start doing road projects, that's probably be a welcome thing for her to come forward and say she needs some more money because she's managed to catch up. But given the current state of affairs, I think that's gonna be quite a challenge. So you might wanna.
So if we keep the 300 there, would we be hurting her if we took the 5?
I don't wanna speak for Beth, I would leave something.
Okay. Is there an amount that we can use to offset that you think, is there any way we can ask her? It would be,
I don't know if she's available today.
all right, that's, we'll leave this open for now. I want to look and see if there are other opportunities in her budget. So she, just to be clear though, she has 500 carryover and she's requesting 300, so that's 800 for road improvement, but we don't know that she has the staff to be able to do all those things. So there may be more carryover because that's the reason why she has the carryover is because she didn't have the staff to do those jobs.
800 plus another 5 that she's requesting.
800 or 500?
So, but if you take the 5 that's left, the 3 she's asking for is 8, and you then add 5 to it, that's $1.3 million.
What was the 5 to it that she added?
This 5 here, that when you asked me if she could do.
Oh, the
that.
5 above that, the
So
roads to be
you combine
determined?
all of them, that's $1.3 million. That's a lot.
Well, if we knew how much of that 1.3 million is materials and how much is labor, we can figure out pretty quickly whether or not she's got the labor to spend that money.
There's that, and she is
Do
gonna
you
need.
know what materials? You probably don't know what the materials are.
No, and she's gonna need to have some road remediation she talked about, some of the roads being saturated, so that's why I wouldn't go for all of it, but you certainly might wanna address using some of it to get FEMA done. And to the point.
If I take the sum of all those monies and understand that we can't do them all and ask for 500 from her, we hit our goal for FEMA. Here's my challenge. While I think this, like we figured it out, it's nice when people figure it out. This is what the state does to us all the time. They figure it out and then they tell us about it later and then we have to figure it out. I don't necessarily feel comfortable making that decision without her input. She's been very good to us. And even if it requires us to take advantage of the next meeting, I'm gonna, as much as I wanted to try to get it all done today, I may have to say we're gonna have to meet with her one more time before we set the mill rate.
I
Are you
support
guys
that.
in agree with that? I mean, this seems to me an opportunity where we can get to where we wanna be. Now, that helps with, in my view, the major issue that we're fighting to try to get these roads repaired based on the storm damage. Where can we find some savings? Are there any other opportunities for discussion here? Can we get more than 5 from her? Can we get 100 in addition to the 5 to offset some of that goal I have to try to get me up? That's gonna be my question to her. Is there a little bit of capital improvement that we know we're budgeting for, but we know we're not gonna do because we don't have the resources presently? Can we under budget for that and extend it for another year and allow us to not have to increase the mill rate just to do something that we're not gonna do?
And good question for Beth.
All right. If we got that amount, if we get 500 more from her, I'm assuming, Cindy, you have a running tally of what we have here. If we got the 500, maybe we could squeeze 600, we got another 100 of my offset of budget increases, right? What's my total now? I should be writing this down.
Why am I tracking it?
460,
460?
I think.
So. Plus bone mill. Let's just go back, because we had a number of 545, that's repurposing bone mill. But think of you just increased the budget 3 million, so the bone mill is gonna go towards, you've increased your part of the budget 700,000.
750 is the number I'm using.
So the bone mill is not an additional savings, because you've just added 750, so let me just.
I'm looking at bone mill. I'm not outside of the 750. I'm looking at, we had to come up with 750. And so, yeah, I subtracted bone mill from there and I subtracted 500 from the other road thing. So that's how I netted out the 750. I wanted another 100 of some of these road repairs that, again, ideally she would do, but she doesn't seem that she can get to them this year. I'd like another 100 of that. And that would give us 100 against that other running balance I have to lower our mill rate.
Okay. And then that would just net out FEMA.
And that's out the FEMA, and now we get all the roads done right away. And then she has less stress on her team to do all the normal maintenance things that she doesn't feel that she can accomplish. But that other 100, when we added it to the numbers we had before, that number I think was 360 of other savings. We got through the Board of Ed and all the others.
You're at, if I take bone mill out, you're at 345.
345, and then another 100 added back in is 445.
Okay. I'm keeping up with you.
You are? Everybody's following with me? Everybody on the board understand where I am?
We're okay so far.
All right. I think that covers our capital with them. Now let's go to their operating revenue.
Operating budget, section 2, starts on page.
131. And you may want to reference her public works slide if you have it handy, if you need it. Okay. The next item that's sort of there's two components here that we spent a fair amount of time discussing. I want to start with trees, and then I want to go over to public, to transfer station. When we talk about the trees, her request and what the Board of Selectmen sent us was basically the same amount, except not hiring the personnel to do it. Her initial goal was to hire 2 personnel and buy a bucket truck. And they said, we're gonna fund you at $150. I think we all saw that presentation and went through it together, so what I'm looking for now is some dialogue. I'd like to hear from our board members of your concept of the trees and on what we've heard. And we've discussed this numerous times, so just want to hear what your thoughts are, given all the stuff that we've had at this point. And I'm gonna start this time, give you a little break, and I'm gonna start with you,
Okay.
because you're usually
Trees.
first.
Trees, I see 2 components. One is outsourced, we've got Charlie Island doing the cutting, and we've got a road crew, I can't remember whether it was 1 or 2 people working equipment to clean up the wood that's cut.
3 total workers.
3 total, yeah, 3 town employees cleaning up the wood. I was thinking about this, you can't think about everything at once, of course, but at least I can. But frankly, we should hire a logger to do that with a logging truck. They just reach over, grab the wood, they do both firewood, short length, and long wood, load it in their truck and haul it away. And I sent an email to her already, I see.
I saw that, yeah,
Yeah.
that seems sensible.
And there's people that want wood, firewood, I believe there's a pellet mill in Maine for the new one, and there's a pellet mill upstate New York that can take the wood, and there's Weiss across the river, he's always looking for firewood, and he has logging trucks. And there's this operation up in Hartford, which I forgot the name of, if you've been up there next to the airport, they've got, Brady Airport, they got huge piles of firewood, which they sell and give away, I believe. I'm not sure exactly what the organization is, but there's the bottom line is probably other sources, other people that want the wood, and we don't have to touch it. They come in with a logging truck, and it's a very handy way to pick up trees. You don't need a backhoe. You just reach over and load the truck, and they can do each day, and the town will not have to get involved, other than maybe pushing a few stone walls or stones back together on the stone walls. That would eliminate a lot of labor and cost. I suggest that she looks into that, because I see that's the labor. We basically got 3 town employees picking up wood, and that could be done more efficiently by a logger. They do it every day. And now wood goes, you probably don't know this, but I drive I-91 every day, this is a side note, that all the wood cut, in fact, the wood that's cut on my land, logwood for lumber, all that went to Canada. If you drive 91 like I do every day, there's log truck after log truck hauling wood out of Connecticut up to Canada to be cut up there. Some of it's brought back to here, or some of it's gone somewhere else. So it's not unusual for a log truck to haul wood that distance, because it economically makes sense. So anyway, I think that would be a big deal if we can do that. Meanwhile, if we can't do that, I don't see any other way we can get around not picking up the wood. So, I suggest that's all I can tell you. I don't see any other solution other than maybe a different way of cutting the trees down, to cut them faster. As we talked about, we wanted speed, because speed is a big deal here, I thought, from our discussion, because we don't want a safety concern, obviously, safety issue. So that's one way to do it. That's my comment.
Very good, thank you. Sir?
I don't know enough about it, I guess, because the way it sounds like the approach is we set up on a street and we just run down the street, because you don't want to be running around from this side of town to the other side of town. You're losing time. You're spending time on this road and the clock's ticking up there. My approach, I thought, would be to take the most dangerous stuff first and work your way, triage on trees. Just find the most dangerous stuff and get rid of it. But I understand the cost effectiveness of staying in one spot, but it's a daunting task. I really don't have the answer for it. Now, the 150 is going to last only so long, and then I'll be back from there.
Yeah, I've debated that with Beth frequently. I'll bring trees to her attention. I'll get a letter, I'll get a notice. Say, yeah, you tell me to go get that one, I'll do it, but it's gonna take half a day, it's gonna take the crew off, and we'll get half the work or a third of the work done that day. So I keep jumping around, I spend most of my time on the road. And getting onto a road, finishing it, and getting on to the next one is probably the best, and most effective way to use our people.
I don't have
Okay.
the answer.
Harvey?
Well, yeah. We could, of course, combine or a version of what Bruce is saying, in terms of try to get the worst stuff out of the way, the stuff that's most likely to fall over, and stay in one spot. I assume she's already thought of this, is that some parts of town are much more severely impacted than others. Right? And so if you were to cut Haywardville Road, which is kind of in tough shape, rather than, I don't know, somewhere else, you could get a little bit of the best of both. Right? So where are we at here? We thinking that we'll fund her for $150,000 and get done what you can get done,
That's what it seems.
and then next year, presumably you'll get another hunk of dough and just keep pecking at it? Is that the plan? Is that the overall concept?
Let me just apply a little math to this, because what I did was I looked at the period that what she said. I was trying to get some idea here. And based on the numbers that she provided, it appeared that the problem is basically without more trees dying, which we had discussed before. But based on our inventory of dead trees today, we would have them at that rate of what we're doing, assuming no increase in cost, take us 4 years to fix the problem. My question, and I'm not qualified for this, but I just can't accept it without knowing for certain, is if a tree dies now, is it gonna fall down in 4 years? Or can it fall down in the 5th year? In other words, we might look at this budget, look at what everyone else is doing at the other towns. They're allocating significantly less than we are.
Right.
And agreed, we have some of the largest land mass of the town included here. So if I even factor that up, they're still significantly less than what we're doing. And my sense is I think we have two obligations. One is we want to get this done and provide for public safety. And at the same time, we have to keep our insurance company happy to make sure that we're within the parameters of being responsible and doing what's right. And if everybody's doing this and we're doing two times this, I don't know. I'm wondering, are we gonna be safe in our little nook of East Haddam and drive through East Hampton and some tree's gonna fall on my car? And that may happen, but I'm wondering, are we maybe doing it, we're doing the right thing, and I don't mean to spell that, but could we do the right thing a little bit longer like we did with some of the other projects? Can we take that 150 and say, instead of doing that, let's just do the math on that, let's just say that's over 4 years, that's $600,000. Can we take that 600 and apply it out over 5 years and lower the annual amount we give? Does that sound? I want to hear dialogue on that, my observation there.
Yes, well, again, we need more knowledge on the job. I'll give you some examples. I'm not a wood expert, but I know I have enough trees in my place, my own experience. Ash trees, for example, the trunk will last a long time, relatively long time. It's the branches that fall off. And you don't know they're happening because they're way up high and they rot fast. For some reason, that's what ash does. And the wind loads break them off. They'll usually break off on a wind load, and don't be standing on the tree when it comes down. So, but ashes, I think, are a first priority in terms of speed, the time. Then the oaks take longer. Oaks take a long time to fall down. Again, the trunk lasts a long time. I've got a dead oak tree down in my place, it's still standing, it's been dead about 4 or 5 years, I think. And the branches are gone, most of them, but they go more slowly. So I think, my honest opinion, I think Bruce is touching upon it. We really need to prioritize which trees have to be cut first. If we're fixed with a certain rate of production, of cutting trees down, it puts the burden on us to prioritize what trees have to come first. And no, we don't have to mark them, but certainly they're self-marked actually. Some are ash, some are oak, some are white oak, and some are maple. And we should go after those first. And the bucket trucks are rubber tired. They can come down, the jacks pick up, they can move further quickly.
Again, we're gonna defer this question to her when we speak to
Yes.
her again, because mainly,
Yeah, yes. I just want to add, I'm answering your question.
my rationale is, she may have approached it. She seems to have logic of why she's not going from one tree to the next. Did you have something?
Ron, I was texting Ron, he was kind enough to reach out to Beth, so we might be able to funnel some questions to her at this point if you want.
Given our time and our commitment to time, as much as I was ambitious to try to move this thing forward and complete today, are you guys okay
Well,
with?
she's available, do we want?
Is she gonna be able?
No,
She'd be able via phone.
You can get your answers.
All right, so do you wanna try, is she like on voice phone?
No, I need to call her.
How will we do this to make it, not kind of overwhelm her?
Well,
Do
if
we
you've
want her
got-
to call in?
If you've got specific questions you wanna ask, right?
Why don't you do this, Cindy? Would you be able, can we just comprise those questions and send her a quick email?
Yeah.
And from a board perspective, let's assume we get these questions answered right away. Do we want to drive on a little longer today, or do you want to meet again next week?
I'd like to stick it out and get this thing taken care of, but if
Your
we
thoughts?
can't, I'm all for going into next week.
All right, your thoughts? I agree, if I can, yes. Your thoughts?
I thought it was pretty ambitious to think we were gonna get there today. So, we're already reconciled to the fact that
leader
we're gonna
has
have
to
to
be
deal
ambitious.
this again.
I am trying to be ambitious. I feel like I'm triage, I'm losing all my members, everybody is. Through attrition, it's just gonna be Deb. and Emmett.
You might ask her if she has access to email, because it'll be a lot easier for me to type an email than to be texting away.
All right, so we'll give you the email stuff in a moment when you get that answer, and meanwhile, we'll just continue our conversation.
As far as my first question was organic about the tree itself. The second response is to your question, the more funding makes things happen sooner, right? That's the bottom line, so if speed is of the essence, then we should do all we can to fund things enough to speed it up.
Okay. Did I ask you guys that too? I'm getting dizzy now. Your thoughts on that speed? Extending out, what do you think about my idea of maybe if we extended it out instead of a 4-year cycle? So, looking at the total budget she has allocated, she's saying 4 years to get things done, 150 a year, that's 600,000. I'm suggesting we don't do it in 4 years, we do it in 5 years or 6 years.
Right, well, yeah, I was struck by the fact that we're the town that seems to have its hair on fire, and this all has to be done tomorrow. And other towns seem to be taking a more laid-back approach. And I understand that they may not be geographically as big, and, you know, Haddam's half state forest anyway, but are we spending a lot of money in a big hurry to do something that doesn't have to be solved in a big hurry?
I agree with Harvey, that's why I was asking the question, we need some knowledge. What's important, what time frame really is, what trees should be cut first, second, third.
So part of my goal in this part of the conversation is to do our best to try to chip away at this preventive budget to get us some savings so we don't have to raise the mill rate. Can we effectively maybe, and again, I'm putting a number out there, please don't get offended by it, but could we go, instead of 150, could we go 100 and still get the job done?
Well, you're not gonna get the same job done.
I'm gonna get the
but
same
you're-
job done over a
a
longer
bigger,
period
yeah,
of
a
time.
lot, yeah.
In other words, you're saying, can we extend the money out, lower our yearly costs without risking, additional risk to public safety?
That's a better way to say it, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's what you asked. Yeah, but I feel I need some more knowledge, I need some more expertise, is how I know how trees rot differently, my own experience, and that's where you need some expertise.
Go ahead, Emmett.
A little bit of insight, I was pretty much up to speed on this a couple of months ago and have not spent a lot of time on it lately. First, the question of where the wood's going, I'd like to think that they're taking it up north. But as of 2 months ago, the quandary was, what do you do with all the wood? How do you get rid of it? A lot of it was being chipped and actually burnt as chips. And that seemed to be the best possible use of it. For whatever reason, the thinking at that point was twofold. The ashes deteriorate quickly. And or they become dangerous, they become a safety hazard within a matter of a year or so of dying. And they're essentially all ashes are going to die. Some are quite large and they're all along the road. Oaks, ordinarily you would expect to stand for a couple of 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 on a good one. Between the drought and what the gypsy moths did, something changed in their morphology, something internally changed, and they become more brittle, more susceptible to breakage. Beth commented when she was here the other day that where traditionally they would put a backhoe against it and then cut it and it would fall, they'd be okay. They can't do that anymore because the limbs are just falling down on the people that are doing the work. That they've become more dangerous than anybody would have anticipated. So the things are different in terms of what we're doing. We are looking at something in the neighborhood of 1,500 trees. Depending on who you are, the estimate goes up or down 100, but it's right in that range. So the idea that stretching it out, you start stretching it way out, and they become more lethal over time. And we don't know really what we're going to see when they leaf out this spring. That's a big question.
And so I want to be clear, in my idea of stretching out,
Yeah.
is not to go way out. I'm saying a 4-year cycle is what her plan is right now. I'm saying either 5
Yeah,
or 6.
But that 4-year plan is just the beginning. And 6 years from now, these trees are going to be truly dangerous.
But presumably we'll have most of them down at that point in time, because at the cycle she's
You're doing
going.
100 a year and you got 1,500. I mean, if you're doing 100 years, it's going to take 15 years to get them all down.
But we're doing more than 100 by increasing the budget.
But yeah, we're looking to do about 300, and that's a 5-year plan to get them done.
That wasn't the number I came up with. I came with a 4-year plan. I thought there was more, and we came up with it under her rate.
I forget, she came up with 300 some odd trees. Maybe it was 375, and that would be.
I'm gonna take the number. I just want to make, I came under a 4-year plan is what I saw her plan was.
Said with the 150, she could do 375 trees a year.
375, there you go.
Would you,
The trouble I have with that is that if
Well-
truly,
That's
1,500 divided by 375 is 4 years. She has a 4-year cycle to try to get rid of all the trees.
yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of your regional limit at that point, those trees.
the trouble, Mr. Chairman, the trouble I have with this is that if indeed the trees do decay at a different rate, depending on species, we shouldn't assume a constant rate of so many trees per year. We have to go after, because after 5 years, those trees that are really bad, or even after 3 years, or 2 years even, those trees are really bad, they're gonna be falling on people. So we don't have that time frame. So I think that's another reason we need some expert advice, because this does involve public safety as well as public finance, as to maybe have to change our strategy here and go after the rapidly decaying species first, and they will give us 4 or 5 years to cut the trees down. Otherwise, it's just telling me we're down the wrong path already. We've already wasted time and wasted money on not cutting the right trees. Because if we can cut all the trees in 1 year, fine, then not a problem. But we can't do that financially.
All right, so real quickly then, regarding the tree budget of 150 as it stands now, do you want to keep it the same, increase it, or decrease it? I'll start with you, Harvey.
Wow. For the sake of argument, decrease it.
And if you say decrease or increase, let me know by how much. I just want to get a framework of what we're thinking. We could just keep it like that and we could come back to it. You
Yeah,
say
no,
decrease.
I mean,
You say decrease. Bruce, what do you say? Increase, decrease, stay the same?
Arbitrarily go to 100 then.
What are you thinking?
My thinking is, we'll keep it the same rate. Because I have no reason, I have no knowledge of what the consequences are of decreasing the money. I know increasing is good, I mean, things will happen faster, but decreasing I'm a little nervous about, because I don't know what the consequences are at this point, because of the different decay rate of the species.
Okay.
Right, but let me run my mouth for a minute. What we're worried about here is risk,
Yeah.
right? That somebody's gonna get hurt,
Yeah.
or somebody's property is gonna be really badly damaged. We're only cutting, East Haddam, the town of, is only responsible for the trees that are in the road right away. Right? We're not worried about the trees in your back lot.
I am though.
Right. But what, and I can't actually give you the answer, but the risk of a tree or a sizable limb falling and hitting an automobile or a person walking or riding horseback is, the limb's gonna fall, but it's gotta fall at the time that it's gonna hurt somebody. And that that risk, to me, doesn't seem to be huge. It seems like a fairly small risk. Not no risk, but it's not like all of a sudden we're gonna find out that in 6 months there were 10 people struck by big limbs in East Haddam. So
Let's hope not.
right. So I'm thinking that it's not a bad deal to knock this down a bit and go slower.
If we look at what we're budgeting now, what is the dollar value that we're actually putting in? What is the change from last year? Do we have that outlined in our budget?
24,000.
It was a 124 for last year, and we're
No,
No,
last year's
increase
budget
of-
was 25,005.
No.
And now-
25, and so we're proposing to increase it by 124,000.
Would you like to know where your budget is at now with everything you've done?
Yeah, let's find it.
So assuming that you're putting the money from FEMA and Beth can match it from within and give you another 100, you're at a 4.8% tax increase or a 1.19 mill rate. Is where you
How much
stand
in
here.
dollars are we in terms of net savings that you calculated in there?
You are at a net change of 370,000 because you added the 75 back in. 75 in for the SRO.
We just found 375. Is that the number? I thought it was more.
Yeah.
Well, because you've taken some to offset FEMA. So
Yeah, give me the, I think we have that equation separate. The FEMA money was, oh, the bone mill number. That's the number I keep adding that in. So I looked at 100. So somebody wrote what I did down. I should have done that before. I had 100 from Board of Ed.
You have 100 from Board of Ed, you have 225 to the driveway, parking lot, 20,000 for fire department reserve,
Mm-hmm.
and then you wanted another 100,000 additional public work concessions. And then to that, you have to add the 75,000 to your contingency. That was done earlier.
All right, so on this side, I have 3, 4, 50, and then 75. I got you. Little horse trading here, but do we look at what you read
I'm
that?
sorry, just so we're clear on where the increase is coming from, what portion of that is Board of Ed and what portion of that, or what's the, you talking just town government change, or are you talking about across the townwide?
This is townwide, will this come up just, so this is what the Board of Selectmen's proposed budget was 34,6,491. Board of Ed gave you 100. I didn't factor in that's out.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Didn't the 225,
Mm-hmm.
20 for fire department reserves, contingency for SRO, and an additional, you're hoping 100,000, gets you to 33,636, or, excuse me, because this is my little worksheet, but here's the piece for you. Here's your tax increase, dollars, percentage, and mill rate.
But the school budget, we're not touching anymore, right? We've already,
Yeah, we're good.
It's factored in.
so, right, so what's the increase based on that? Instead of looking at it
Overall.
as a whole, look at it just from what we're working on now, town government.
Town government? Second, do that.
In other words, we're trying to get we're trying to balance the budget on the back of the town right this second, because the Board of Ed's already set. I just wanna know what we're changing, what we're affecting.
Sure.
That's a good thing to know.
And I'll share with you how I kind of came up with the number I asked for, was I looked at their fixed obligations with salaries and whatnot. I can show you on the chart, but I looked at the increase that they were contractually obliged to meet, and then I said, okay, that number's off the table, and I subtracted that out, and that's where I said, okay, they get some increase, but I'm gonna try to negotiate with them on that behalf, ask them to make some cuts. That was the logic I used when I
Yeah, no,
presented
it's
that
good,
number.
it's good logic, I'm just, right now, to try to lower the impact, we're doing it all on the back, on the town side. That's all, I just wanna see the breakdown.
And as she's looking at Ron, question, did not Cindy, Beth, was she able to take like email? Okay. Oh, you could put her on the system. Oh, this is cool. If you would, I'd like, if you could try, I would appreciate
First
that
time for
greatly.
everything, right?
That would be wonderful. I would, and just, we'll share with her, what we have going on here, so she's not blindsided. And just to be clear, as part of a meeting, her contribution becomes part of the record as well, correct? Meanwhile, as he's doing that and she's doing this, I'm gonna ask for a motion to take a short recess. 5 minutes. We had planned on going, so let's just before we do that, we had planned on stopping at 2. Before I continue this meeting, after this recess, I wanna ensure that I have all the people, volunteers and whatnot. You can stay. Can everybody stay? Well, we could continue going?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes?
up to a point.
Yeah.
Come on.
I have to take my wife out for her birthday tonight, so, yeah, I gotta leave eventually too. You're good too? All right,
Lock the doors.
so let's take a brief recess. Motion for recess for 5 minutes or so, is that good? Second?
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Do you have a proposed new end time,
We shut the video.
like 3 or 4?
Of ending time?
Yeah, do you have a proposed new, whatever it takes?
Okay. We had good news. Beth Lund is available. She'll be joining us within a half hour. Meanwhile, we're gonna shift from Public Works. Let's go to Lakes. Where can I find Lake Association? Back tab?
Tab 2. Pages. Starting at 177. Now this, your 160, Bruce, I told you I had to get to, takes into account getting another 100,000 from Public Works outside of payment, so keep that in mind.
The numbers that we're working with right now. That, they may or may not come true, but we're gonna hopefully get the result. All right, so what's unique here? If you look at the budgeted amount for 2018, 2019, you'll see 20,000. Do you guys see that? And it looks like Hayward did not expend all of their resources last year and requested that money get transferred over into this year. So the number
Reserves.
to reserves. Correct. So the 20 that we normally provide looks like it includes almost another 14,125 additional. And so the question is, do we let them take and put into reserves what they didn't spend last year, or do we just kind of pay it as they need it? So, Cindy, did I articulate that correctly?
So, pretty much. Just to
Yeah,
clarify,
feel free to
so
correct me,
When they did their budget request, they discussed this in the finance subcommittee. They've asked that at year end, anything they don't expend automatically gets transferred to their reserves. And they've always also asked that we start funding their reserves. One thing for Board of Finance members who've been on a while, at the end of the year, we would find from the lakes, whoever didn't spend their money, the other lakes would come asking for it. And the Board of Selectmen last year said, we're just splitting it three-way and we're done. And I've had conversation with one of the lakes who feels that's more equitable. So that's where they're at. This is just them all asking for more money this year. And again, the request for any surplus to go into capital reserves, which the finance subcommittee has not acted on.
Now, Cindy, I've been a liaison with that particular group for a number of years prior to today. And in the past, the Board of Selectmen always seemed to take their numbers and bring it out a little bit, and we would get the three-way split, if you will. Why this year did they take that number and let them transfer it forward? Do you have any insights on that? And Emmett, do you want to maybe address that question?
I really have no insight in that.
I think they were just down to the wire, and it was one they didn't. And I don't even recall them, Linda, maybe you do, even having a dialogue on the lakes. On capital, but not the operating request per se. The lakes came in to talk about their capital requests, which are covered by reserves, but they really didn't have any in-depth dialogue on the operating budget request.
Okay.
No, last week you said that you were working on some kind of policy for. Right. Or that was been requested.
So what are you thinking, Bill? You thinking of taking,
I'm gonna go around and ask you guys what you're thinking. I'm thinking that's an opportunity for us to, I don't know why, I guess, if they were here, they would tell us they need money to kill more weeds, and they could justify it. I just don't understand how much more they need. You know, I mean, it sounds like one of the tree things, where it's such an unknown that I have trouble quantifying it, and being fair and reasonable and getting the job done are goals, yet I want to make sure I do the right thing. So with that said, I'm looking for your input as a board. So Todd, why don't you start with that?
Yeah, I come from a place, if you don't use your budget, you lose it. It goes into budget next year. So I can't see it. We should take it back. We should not give it back to them again.
And our approach has been a zero budgeting process anyway. So I guess the line of thinking is, if they needed that extra money and they had needed it last year, we're saying, okay, you need it, we're gonna fund you for it. And this year too, we're looking at it from that perspective. I don't think we just wanna spend it because we had the extra money left over. Because we had surplus in the town and we're not just spending that money.
We're not in a
also.
situation where we give money away either. We're pretty tight.
All right. You're thinking now based on that.
I really don't know enough about it
Okay.
to comment.
Artie, you have any thoughts? You actually have probably the most educated thoughts on this, given that you're very keenly aware of this, these organizations and what they do and what's going on. You live up that way, so.
I can't really justify, I couldn't take on the burden of explaining this to you. I don't know enough either. I'm not inclined to roll money forward into, we asked for $10,000 and we spent 3, and I wanna put 7 ahead for next year.
I agree.
I'm not keen on that.
Yeah, neither way.
And the deal as the agreement as I remember it was that, it was up to some limit, of course, sort of a dollar for dollar match. That the Lake Association would spend, $3,000, and the town would then, would expend $3,000, and the town would reimburse them for $1,500.
That's actually interesting, because I remember that too. Am I correct on that? Is he correct on that,
You are
Cindy?
correct on that, so when they seek their year-end reimbursement and they're seeking 4,000 or 2,000, they have to bring me receipts of 4,000. So they have to prove they've expended it to get their 50% up to the ceiling of their budget. So they do have to demonstrate that.
Right.
All right, so
And-
they didn't, well, I'm sorry.
So I would, be inclined to treat it as a pay-as-you-go. Right? And I'm not gonna open up a piggy bank for you.
Yeah, we can't afford to, really.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, following that logic, I would say that if they didn't use it, they didn't need it.
That's right.
So we'll use it for something we do need it for.
All right, and I'm in agreement. So do we then reduce that number to, what number would it be? It's, I
Maybe
see
that's
3
660.
numbers for the budget request, 12, 12, and 10. Cindy, what is the number that, outside of that, help me through this? I see, is it a total of,
Total request is 34,125.
and what is the logic? I see the logic of Hayward. What about Bashan? Did they just look at increased cost?
I have that PowerPoint they do every year. I don't remember off the top of my head, but let me just look.
And for that matter, before she gets us that number, we also want to point out that everybody requested increased amounts, so are their costs increasing dramatically? Let's see.
They're just showing 50 projected expenses and requested from the town on page 12 of their PowerPoint, which is under tab 7.
Again, not as an expert, but is it Moodus Reservoir significantly larger than the other 2 individually with the 2 reservoirs? And don't they have a really big problem with these? Why is their budget number 20 and the other 2 are 24?
If you continue to go forward in their presentation, starting at page 14, they talk about current year accomplishments and next year's objectives of what they're looking to do by body of water.
Hello, Beth. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate you being here. So we have a 2-part question. Question 1 is, we don't let them roll that money over. I think unanimously we agreed on that. Question 2 is, do we look at the amount they requested and allow them to double, in essence, their request, not double, but pretty close to it. Those numbers are very considerable. Or do we give them some increase in budgeted amount and keep the difference for the town? I'd like to hear some thought on that. Not a huge savings when I come down to it, unless we just keep everything fit to what we had last year, which was $20,000.
There's a smart person in this room who said, I don't know enough to make that judgment. It would be arbitrary in a way, but we're not talking about a whole ton of money either.
This is true.
$7,500 apiece?
I mean, we're not taking, I mean, you're right, we're not finding the savings I'm hoping for to change the mill rate, but we also wanna show them good faith that we're increasing with the cost and yet not going too crazy. Is that right? So why don't we, is 7,500 acceptable to you, Todd?
Yes, it is. I'm disappointed they didn't justify their increase to us in one of these charts. It would have been a lot easier
That
for us.
would have made it simple.
So for that penalty, for that mistake, 7,500 is reasonable.
It's demerits.
You get that, Cindy?
Word for word.
All right, so that's 34, 125 minus 100 minus, I'm too tired to do it the other way. So we saved about $11,000, roughly $10,000. Okay, that's it. That's something that I'll just put a 10 there, just to add it to our mix. Okay, Cindy, was there any other categories, low-hanging fruit, things that I forgot that we are gonna look at too? But I think we covered most of the things you and I discussed, other than. So Beth, if you would, we're going to explain, I'm going to explain kind of what we were thinking in the aggregate. And then we want your engagement, because we don't want, we started walking away here thinking we came up with these great ideas and we might be really in the wrong direction. So it's really important for us to get your buy-in that we're gonna be offering the right idea. What we noticed, based on your presentation, and for, if you guys don't mind, why don't we pull out her stuff so we have it. But what we noticed, based on your presentation, is given all the scope of the projects that you're dealing with, you are overwhelmed. Completely overwhelmed with not enough personnel going on leave, projects that are all over the place, and significant projects. So one of the things that came up in the last meeting, and it wasn't my personal line of reasoning original, but as I heard the other members share it, I thought it made a lot of sense. And so our thinking was, if we could find the means to fund the FEMA projects right now, not the Neptune Avenue. We kind of looked at the mix, and given the numbers you gave us, we said, okay, we have two FEMA issues. One is replacement of some serious structures, and that's a bigger deal. You have to outsource all that. But what if we found the means for you to pay for all the road damage that you have? And I was estimating about $3 million. Is that a number that's about right when we looked at it? If we could allow you to have, if we gave you the green light and said, do all the roads, it would cost about $3 million given where we are right now.
Right, 3 million would be the highest.
Okay, so our thinking is, of that 3 million, we don't have to pay the whole thing. We have to pay 750 or so, because FEMA's gonna pay the balance. But we have to come up with the whole thing in order to get us started. So our thinking is, let's see if we could find that for you. And if we find it for you, what would that do to the rest of your world as a public works department? Would be able to function? Would it alleviate all the stresses? Because it was apparent your team is working really hard and there's a lot of stress going on in your department, and you're trying to figure out which one to do. So is this a course of action that, if we do, would make sense to you?
Yes.
Second question.
The only other option is if we do temporary help, and we could solely dedicate them to rebuilding the gravel roads. You could have, I mean, it's not skilled labor. We have a grader operator who's excellent, so he would be the main key, but a roller operator, any temporary person, you could get them up and running quick. We could pay a hauling company to bring us some material.
Would you be able to get all the roads done before this year is over?
If I had 3 temporary employees. And that would allow us to have our 25% match. If that's an option.
Okay, so, well, bottom line is, I think our thinking is, and it's whether we do it in-house or outside, is gonna be the decision point. We'll look at the analysis of cost for that. We'll discuss that. But we're sort of moving the idea forward that we wanna try to funding to get it done as soon as possible. Because we are approved for FEMA, we just have to come up with a certain amount of money, and rather than do it pay as you go and then do a project and then get paid out and do a next one, which is nice financially, but it doesn't seem to accomplish our goal of getting these roads done. And as Todd alluded to, the problem I think we're facing down the road is if we don't get these things done sooner, there's gonna be more damage and it's gonna cost us more as we move forward. So the sooner the better. I think we all win that way. We then looked at your capital plan. And so therein is really where we wanted to have this dialogue, because it appears, and do you have that available so she can see what we were talking about? I'm not sure you have it by memory either, just to look at her capital plan in terms of the projects that we were discussing. So we were wondering, there's a few things, we're under a bit of a challenge just to think that, okay, you have all these big projects, you don't have the personnel to do all of those projects. Is it possible that we could take some of the funding from a couple of those projects that won't get done this year and use that toward a budget that we're gonna use to offset?
Yeah, I think we talked about the 500,000 that I had proposed, and that's, you know.
What
everyone
tab is that on for us so we can look at this?
It's tab 5, page 13.
Okay, good.
So that money is put aside, and normally I earmark it for a certain road, but because, you know, the conditions we had with the flooding and the high groundwater table, I wanted to wait to see the damage after winter and the frost let out. The roads, there are certain roads in really poor condition, but with that said, we haven't finished petticoat at this point, and that will take manpower. So that 500,000, we wouldn't pave spring, summer, fall, it would be the following spring. So if we hate to give that money back and say we don't need it because we do, but realistically,
Because we're not thinking we want you to give it back. We want these roads repaired. We're just thinking you're not spending it this year, so we won't tax for it this year, but we'll probably give it to you next year, right? Because you're gonna be focused on the other things that you have going on. All right. Additionally, so the 500 is maybe some part of that, not all of it. You may need some money reserved anyway, right? But then we also had the other two, what were they, road?
Your pavement and shim overlay and road materials.
So the budget you presented for next year wasn't, again, this is through us kind of digging in. What you presented, we're just assuming that's good. So that looks like $300,000 that you need. But there's some unexpended funds on that part of the ledger that we are wondering if we can take back. And that, I don't know what that number, what was that number? A carry forward from before?
Carry forward plus this year, she's got about 508.
Plus the 300? So the difference on that is about 2? The carry forward is about 2, right? I'm just adding the 128 and the 164, I'm getting it at 300.
Yeah, last year, the original budget for both of those was 292, and there was a 290 carry in, so, and she spent 74.
Is there any money in there that can also be utilized elsewhere?
how much do I have in there total?
So in pavement and shim overlay right now, you have, and road materials, you have over 500 left, just over 500.
This is where, right now I've been charging all the additional tree work to our tree line item, and we're significantly over. And I thought that that money was gonna cover the shortage.
So she was looking, so at the end of the year, and we,
Because we had that meeting and you said to go ahead and use.
Right.
that
Yeah, no,
money.
no trouble about that, so.
Right, so,
I don't think they're looking to use all of it when we can account for the trees. I think they're just looking to see what you would feel comfortable using towards FEMA or elsewhere.
We're not trying to take away, we're trying to reallocate within the budget
no,
to
I
say,
know,
can we
I
get
just
this stuff
have
accelerated?
projects that we will do this summer to feel comfortable with pulling 150 out of that.
So 150, and then you said the 5 is okay too? That's the number we were looking for, wasn't it? And that's assumed, we're looking at, and then not having to cut trees. Now, one of the things about trees that I think we as a group missed when we were talking about it, the amount you budgeted was one number, the amount you requested was, well, the amount that the Board of Selectmen presented was a much higher number, but I think we never talked about the amount that you actually expended, because I think that's a considerable number, right? We want to understand that if the original budgeted amount was 25 and now they're requesting 150, that's a considerable jump, but I think you've spent 75 so far, correct?
I'm gonna pull up exactly what's spent in a second.
I don't think quite as high as 75. Maybe in the 60 range.
Okay. But we are looking to try to get 6 and then maybe look at that tree budget. If we go with allowing for the tree budget as it stands, and we got this 650, it's the same number. Is our group kind of comfortable with that overall? So here's a question that we're asking you. If you gave us that portion of your capital part back and we utilize it to help us, and we give you the green light on getting FEMA done, we've now created, you're either hiring temporary people or you're outsourcing to get the roads done, one or the other. We're assuming you're gonna do the better one of the two. If that happens, and we know you're losing some staff, but given the tree work, can you get your job done with, I want to pretend we're just eliminated FEMA, so you're doing no more FEMA projects, you outsourced it. But the existing staff you have in public works, are you going to be able to get your job done? Is it going to cause any unnecessary stress if?
No, we're still in a shortfall, because the one slide I presented, that was with no FEMA work, and we were still at quite a significant shortfall.
And was that shortfall due to, we'll call it leave, because there's a number of reasons people are out. Was it because staff would be on leave, or is that because you just have?
That would be on leave.
All right, so,
On average, we have 4 to 5 employees a day throughout the summer.
and if you had that temporary staff, how much money would that cost?
We would have to pay them, I think the Teamsters make 28. I think we have to pay 80% of the hourly rate.
What was the number?
But no benefits or anything associated with it.
Okay, so let's see if we can find that. Where was the cost? Where was the hours? All right, so is this the number, the 36 man hours that you're missing? It's the,
It's on that slide.
on your slide it says 3,600, right? So I guess I took 3,650 is a little bit higher, times 2275, is that what you said, Linda?
Remember you come up with?
It's like $83,000. Right? Did somebody check my math?
Right.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? What would the difference be, because all of your estimates for FEMA are based on our guys doing the work, for the most part, knowing Neptune and stuff. When you did the estimations for the gravel roads, you based it on the crew doing the work.
I think I elevated it in case we had to contract it out, so that is within the estimate. That's why if we do it in-house, it will be
So if you did temporary, you could ratchet that down.
correct.
So
All right, this is a great decision point, because now we're determining whether it's better to do it with FEMA or in kind, right, or do it ourselves. Because you're gonna have to replace the people that you use with temporary people. So FEMA is if we contract the work out for all the roads, it costs more through FEMA? I mean, through,
Well, it would cost, if we were to put it out to bid, it probably, I would think, Curtin Construction is a local person that would probably bid on the job. I think they'd come in higher than our staff just because they would have to bid union wages.
that's the other, oh my goodness. That's the other issue, is if we go over, what's the threshold now?
Reconstruction is $100,000.
So if we spend more than $100,000, we have to pay prevailing wage
That's
if we hire a contractor.
So
even though we get the 75%, the 25% that we provide is gonna be greater if we hire outside.
correct.
Because
And you don't need to pay prevailing wage if you hire temporary people to fill in the assignments that you're having trouble. And can you hire temporary people to get the work done that you need to do to run the town? The maintenance and all the other
I believe
projects?
so because we just advertised for a temporary employee to cover for another employee that's out indefinitely right now. And we had quite a few qualified applicants. So
Can we find a way to split this difference? We're looking at $80-something thousand. We're trying to struggle to get every kind of savings we can to get this mill rate down. You just gave us back a bunch of money to reallocate, so our blessing to you would be, go forward, given what you just said, and I'm gonna ask the board to affirm, I'm gonna ask that for their comment. But my thinking is, okay, yeah, you wanna do it in kind, we're gonna do the work. Let's get these roads done as soon as possible. I think Todd pointed that out, it makes sense for us to do that. And then at the same time, you're gonna get your temporary staff to kind of come in and we're gonna get this cash flow. Is there any other places in your capital budget that, any projects where, right now you're able to give us back $550, is there maybe another $50,000 in here somewhere that you can help us with? And that would go a long way to.
And to make, the board is saying 3 million, is that a reasonable number? Could you live with less and still accomplish what the board's trying to do?
it's
Realistically, getting it all done in one fiscal year. Just to throw that out there.
right, the thing is with that $3 million, the gravel roads are pretty cut and dry. I don't know how Neptune Avenue, Hemlock Valley, and Bonfoy are gonna come back until we have engineering studies done.
And so we could almost take those and go by the Board of Selectmen's idea, where we're just sort of letting those.
You back those out.
Right.
3 million. They've already backed
We've
it
taken
out.
those out. We know that those are coming out down the road. We're looking at just the road work. And when you gave us the estimate of 3.7, we excluded 700,000 because we thought that those three projects were the 700,000 and 3 million was the road resurfacing.
I think the gravel roads will come in lower than 3 million. That was a high estimate, because some of the gravel roads, there were areas that 4 feet of material washed away, but then there are areas of flatter sections that, you know, we didn't lose more than 6 inches. So we estimated on the high end, but feel fairly confident that we can bring that down.
How do we run this now through her budget then if we're looking to do this? What do we do if we have changes?
So what we would do, if you turn to pages 14 and 15, we had zeroed out for FEMA. So I would just put a number for FEMA that you came up with and then allocate 25% of that. Or maybe it's 20 if she's using temporary help, or, you know what I mean? We would come up with a number you would feel comfortable.
Where you're gonna use your staff for these jobs because they're higher paid and we get a better reimbursement rate. Over temporary, correct? I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, I could definitely switch the temporary crew to go with the tree crew and use our employees.
Which would also give you more mileage for your trees and some of that.
Right, we would definitely need Jamie Shagrew on the grader, because that's his specialty. And then we could pull some of our other higher paid employees, our senior.
So we have to budget a number. We used in our mind $3 million for the roads resurfacing. Can you give us a ballpark number to get us closer to what we should budget for this? Because we have to budget the amount and then we know the ratio. We have to come up with 25%. So we have to come up with a number today.
2.8.
Okay, so you're pretty comfortable with
Because
that.
we can also, if we're doing these all in one lump, you know, we also might be able to put the material out for bid, or tell our supplier, we're gonna be purchasing X amount, maybe they will then give us a better rate as well, if we can guarantee to them.
There's our 50,000,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so just to kind of summarize this, and Deb is looking for this as well, and for our citizens here. What we're trying to do is take some of the capital money you have and reallocate it. And so right now, no money had been allocated toward FEMA, and you had some regular improvements. We're suggesting reallocating that money over to the FEMA, zeroing those numbers out. So it's just really a reorganization of your capital plan and not cutting anything out of your budget, just reorganizing, giving you the green light to move forward and get this project initiated. And given what you just shared with us, it sounds like doing it in kind is more cost effective to us as a town, and we'll get the same level of quality. And then you're gonna hire temporary people to kind of offset that difference. And do we put in we have the money, I ran through all this list, but we have to add some money for her for temporary people, correct? Is that the only thing?
I do have, and what I was thinking, I was gonna discuss it with Cindy, I do have in my general highways budget temporary
Give about 10 grand, yeah, 19 grand.
staff, and we normally hire college students. We might just wanna allocate that and hire temporary help that has their CDL. So instead of paying the $13 an hour for a college student, pay the 22, someone that could
So in other words, you're gonna,
operate equipment.
and we're gonna have to give you more money for temporary based on what you just said. But rather than, you're just saying there might be 10,000 because we're gonna have to use those people anyway. We might be able to not hire those folks. Did you follow everything I said, Cindy?
You did, but I'm gonna need to walk it through so the board has a clear understanding how we're going to put all these numbers into the plan. Make sure people understand. So, first of all, on pages 12 and 13, capital, Beth is indicating out of pavement and shim overlay and road materials, we can use 150,000 from this year. So what I would recommend is, because we're trying to get appropriations down, we find that between the 128 and 164. So we would reduce those appropriations because she'd have the money from this year. So in finding that, maybe we'd appropriate 156 64. And, sorry, it's a long day, I don't wanna do math in my head.
Same thing happens to me.
Hmm?
I said, yeah, same thing happens to me. We'll double check the numbers if you like.
So we would take, to get to the 150, I'd take 100 off of road and materials to get 64,000. Take it 64,000, and then I would take 50 off the 128 and make it 78,000. And that's where we find the 150, because you could keep it from this year, because you're trying to reduce your appropriation. So this would be 64, 78.
Mm-hmm.
500,000. So Beth said she could give that up, so going back to FEMA, 2.8 million, you would need at 75%, a match of,
700.
at 2.8 million, you'd need a match of 2.1 million. Or, right, 700,000. 700,000, we have 200 from Bone Hill, and we have 500 from this. What I would suggest is take a piece of that 500 and move it to our operating budget as temporary, and then the rest stays in capital as the match. Because you're not gonna pay for staff out of capital.
Take a piece of her requested budget and move it to operating.
Right, so if
Yeah, I'm
you
okay
say
with
that
that.
500, do we move, say, 100 for temp and 400 for capital? Something of that nature, so at the end of the day, it comes out the right way, but then she's sufficiently budgeted in her operating budget for temporary.
I totally agree. I want you to say that again, though. Just go through the numbers so everybody here on the board and the public understand it.
Okay, so we're on page 13. We're gonna change from roads to be determined, and that's going to be a FEMA grant match, is what it's gonna say, for 400,000. Pavement and shim overlay will be 78,000. And road improvement materials rather, will be 64,000. Okay, you turn to the next page, we're gonna show FEMA for 2.8 in total.
Mhm.
And then what I need to do is go into Beth's operating budget and add 100,000 to temporary help. Do that, I'm talking it through.
It's 100,000 more or less than we need.
You said 83, so.
You just rounded it up,
Just to make
okay.
it clean, probably doesn't matter. If she goes over on one and under the other, we can adjust.
Okay.
Let me just go do that. So that's increased by that amount. And then if you were to go to your summary sheet in capital, just so you, to walk you through how that would break down. Yeah, I can put that on the screen for you. That might be easier.
That would be great.
I haven't made a complete adjustment to it though, I just wanted, just to walk down through, so now her capital here is 3,477,000. And then FEMA, 2.8 million. Is 22.1 million, but I'm gonna only say two, actually, no, we'll keep with that. We'll match over there. You have 2.1 million in FEMA proceeds. And then coming down to repurpose capital, if you come over here, you'll see the bone mill and 200,000 that will help you get you there as well.
Mhm.
Now I just wanna go see what it does to the whole budget, so bear with me.
Did you also include the increased, for temporary help on that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I wanna go look at my totals now. Actually, in capital, back here, match is 2.1 million, but I'm gonna subtract 100,000
That's what we already delivered in kind?
because we moved it to temporary help.
Oh, okay, right, so it's $2 million.
And in all honesty, it'd be 2 million because we've matched it in operating. Need to walk through this again. I know
Are you
wanna
sure
be-
about, are you sure about that 2 million? Because we're spending the full 2.8, even though we moved it through our budget, right? Otherwise, we're still gonna get that 2.1 back.
Yes. That's what I wanna do here. I got 400,000 here, we reduced that by 150. Put 2.8 here, really this should be 2.7. Because we moved some to temporary help. But I just need a little more time to walk through this,
We're gonna give you a chance to kind of visit your numbers.
thank you. Number went up when it should have gone down. I got the concept down, I just wanna make sure the numbers work, guys.
Okay. Let's do this. Without putting you on the spot and trying to make you do that right away, and where we are. Do we have any more conversation for that? I think we asked the questions we needed. We're off. We did a little bit of reorganization of your projects. And we want to ensure that you get the resources you need and we get the jobs done. And so, are you comfortable with where we are going generally? You gave us some money back, and then we didn't, by the way, this conversation did not involve any tree cutting yet, or trees yet, but are there any questions or any other thoughts that we want to have in order to get forward? We shift around, so now we answer questions, and you know right now, your point is, if I have these resources and I do these, I can get this job done. And that's what we want to ensure.
Right, my only issue is by giving back, from the road improvement, that is where any overage on the trees would have come out of there, so.
So if we don't cut your tree,
150 with the trees, that's not sufficient to remove what's dead right now. That's a totally different issue, I don't know how.
well, we had some dialogue on, do we cut the trees, do we cut back on the tree budget? But I think we're looking for a number, and right now, understanding that we kind of reached the number we're looking for, you're gonna continue with the trees. There were some observations on technique of cutting trees and whatnot, and we'd like to maybe have you answer that real quickly. I personally would be in favor of keeping the budget as it is for the trees. And it is a bit sensitive, but in terms of the amount, if you go over, we could talk about that momentarily. But I do wanna let my other board members maybe just do a quick overview, and not too long, about some of the ideas you had about trees or questions on them.
Okay, question about trees. First of all, this is a question of risk versus speed. Cutting down all the trees and before they fall down on somebody. Different species rot at a different rate. Ash is probably the quickest in my limited experience, and oak probably a little longer, white oak even longer. when you, I believe you told us you selected, your strategy is to go road by road, irregardless of the species and the rot rate.
Right, just because a lot of the time is mobilization, set up, and are just moving. As opposed to bouncing one tree out on Early Road and then bouncing back to one tree on Clark Gates and one. We're a large square mile town. So
Yes.
travel,
Have you got any direction from experts as to the decay rate? Is a ash tree will rot twice as fast as oak, for example? We don't want any, none of us want any trees or branches falling on people, and the branches go first usually. And, have you done any consultation?
I have, the ash trees typically become very brittle very quickly. Once they're dead, they're coming down, branches are coming down within a year of them dying. Oak trees typically will die and can stand 5-7 years, but there's something unique with the combination of the drought and the gypsy moth that the oak trees are rotting from the inside out and becoming very, the term arborist uses punky. So structurally, they become deficient faster than a normal oak tree death. So we're finding they're decaying at a rapid rate as well.
Then I gotta ask you a question. You told us it would take you 4 years at the current rate to cut down these 1,500 trees, is that correct? Are we gonna be, all the trees gonna come down before that, on their own?
It's hard to say, because in the summer sometimes when we have a windstorm come through, we might know there are certain dead trees. They're the ones that stay standing through a significant windstorm, and right next to it, a live tree comes down.
Yeah, because the live tree's got leaves, a lot of drag,
Right,
a lot of bending moment on it.
so
Mhm.
trees are hard to predict, and even if Charlie Islin is one of the top arborists in the state, and that's who we use. Worked for Eversource, he's been on committees, and even he can't, like I'll ask his opinion about a certain tree, he goes, stand for 5 years, it could fall tomorrow.
So he can't, what
No
I'm
one
thinking,
can,
so he's comfortable with the 4 years?
well, trees are gonna fall
Before 4 years.
before 4 years.
See, that's what worries me tremendously. And that Charlie Islin agrees with that? These trees are gonna fall down before 4 years is up? So we're already in trouble. What you're telling me.
Now, I want to ask, if you are informed of a tree that looks like it's coming down, you don't put it on some schedule, you go to it right away, right?
I can't right now. That's how we used to operate. But I'm not doing that now because it would just triple our expense. I will try to, the reason I picked the roads that I've picked is because I've received numerous complaints of trees on that road, so then I'll
Mhm.
You're going to the
mobilize
high impact
that
areas, all right.
street. So, but there are definitely people that have called in that they're on a waiting list.
Second question that you brought up, and I don't mean to ask your question, but I want to get you on track. What was?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What was your question earlier about the process being utilized in the collection of wood?
Yes, thank you, you read my mind, that was my next question, matter of fact. Islam's people cut the trees, and they cut the branches, they cut the trunk down at the stem, at the stump as well? Cut the whole tree down to the ground, and your crew, 3 men, and 1 or 2 pieces of equipment, go in and pick up what's cut down. And they load it into trucks,
Correct.
okay, town trucks? I sent an email to you, probably haven't had a chance to read it yet, I sent it to your Public Works address, that there are loggers.
Unless the resident directly behind or someone on that street says, I want that wood, we'll leave it.
Excellent,
We're
hope there's
happy
more
to
of that.
leave it.
So what I suggested in my email to you is that there's loggers with logging trucks, either triaxles or trailers, semi-trailers, that with cranes, they go and pick the wood up, load it in their truck, and haul it away. And to say a wood pellet mill in Maine or upstate New York, or there's a place up in Hartford, just north of the Brainerd Airport, has huge stacks of firewood. They can come in and do that work for you and take the wood away at no cost to the town, because they're getting free wood, basically. And they pick it right out, they have the equipment, and you've probably seen those pickers work, they can load a truck in record time, and they have, in fact, they have speed contests for it. So they can do that instead of having you have your guys spend all day just picking up wood. That's my suggestion.
We can look into that right now.
Do you know, I think Ted Weiss, I forgot his first name, in Haddam? He and his wife have a firewood business, pretty sizable. He's the type of guy that would take your wood.
We can ask,
He's right across the river.
definitely look
And
into
he has triaxles with, several triaxles with cranes to pick wood up.
that.
He
Okay,
goes all over the state picking up wood. That's my suggestion,
I'll reach out to him.
because that would get him done.
Harvey?
I'm fine.
Okay, so, Cindy, how are you doing?
So carefully walking it through.
Thank Beth for coming in.
I am gonna think that, I'm just saying that, I don't know that, at this point in time, I think you addressed all our questions, and we are very grateful, because coming in on such short notice on a Saturday is a big deal to us, but, thank you very much, and you know, overall, we also want to express our gratitude for the work that not only you do, but all of the employees in the Public Works Department are doing. I noticed this morning was snowy out, and somebody was out there plowing.
No, it's spring.
Yeah, so thank you, and we do really want to try to work together as much as we can. There's a lot of unusual things happening. It's like the perfect storm between the flood damage, the trees, and all the other things they have going on, so we appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so given the time and where we are, so we really are far along. And so rather than adjourn or do anything else, I want to give Cindy a little bit of time, so I'm gonna ask for another recess. I won't, now given, you want a little time, right? So I want to give us a break, let's have a real break, and let her do her numbers in quiet, and let's do a break. And then my goal would be to have our conversation, our public comment and our conversation, and wrap up by 4 o'clock. Can we try to shoot for that? And if we start finding ourselves dragging on, then that'll be the decision point where we decide we can't go any further. Is that fair enough for everyone? Can you work with us on that?
4 o'clock is fine with me too, but no later than, because I also have a date tonight.
4 o'clock it is. Okay, so let's have a motion for recess?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, let's go.
I'm actually gonna head into my office.
Yeah, go do that where you're quiet and you can focus and not under the stress of us peering down on you saying, save us some more money.
I'm gonna make sure it works in the accounting system.
All right, good. We're getting there. So, food for thought, this is not part of the meeting, but food for thought is, we got that number she showed, now we have to decide, and I'll go and ask her now, to give us a sense of what the fund balance is. So that, because that's gonna be what we decide overall, okay? So just keep that in mind as we take. Okay, so while Cindy's doing her calculations, she's gonna come back to us with the progress we've made. I don't have any further elements of the budget I wanna target, unless anyone here thinks there's something that I overlooked, and it could very well been that, but I think we've covered all of the items that created opportunities to find some savings. So my thinking is balance of the day, she's calculating these numbers. The two major things that we have to complete would be looking at these numbers and then deciding if we're gonna use any unassigned fund balance to offset the mill rate, okay? We do those two calculations, and we are then prepared to set a mill rate. So here's what my thinking is. Cindy's getting set up now. What we'll do is I'll let Todd ask his question, and then Cindy can do a brief review, and then I wanna provide for, and I'm grateful to our audience for sticking around this long, but we'll do guest and audience comments, and then we'll go into the specific analysis of mill rate. And I want to accomplish all of that in the next capital session. But I think we're pretty far along, and I think we do. So, Todd.
The teacher's retirement, the budget.
Oh, that's a good I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm gonna have you answer a question, but I want to address how we're approaching it. Would you like me to approach it first?
Yeah, it might answer my question.
All right, so we, on the teacher's retirement, the state of Connecticut came down and gave us an estimate of what our obligation would be should the governor's plan go into effect. And some municipalities are saying that's never gonna happen, and they just ignored it. We took a different approach, and we said, okay, given the amount, we're gonna estimate that into our budget, and it's included in our budget. So if that money should somehow not have to be assessed to us, that'll be just windfall that we keep in our budget. But we're planning for that.
Okay, I just, I had a detailed question. Right now, it's $61,962. Now, when Norm Needleman was here, he said it's likely that we're gonna force.
They were jumping that number, if you had seen the number, it went up every single year for the next 5 years till it turned to like 180,000 for us.
But it starts at 25% of the pension cost for the new hires, is what he thought it would end up being. Does this reflect that, or is this higher than that, or lower than that? I don't know.
I'm not sure what the number, all I received was the number, and I'm not sure.
It's the number that the governor's recommended.
He's looking for how did the government come about
Yeah.
those numbers. I don't know the methodology, all we did was take the number that the government shared.
All right, so the government, okay, that's close enough for now, I think.
Here's how much it is, and we just took it, we did have to.
We could guess that, Todd.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't be here.
We might have higher
I'd be,
aspirations.
I'd be in Bermuda Harbor on my boat right now.
Okay, good. Cindy, how did you make out after all of our machinations?
Okay.
So we're going to, Cindy, you may not have heard when I was coming in, but what I'd like to do is have you show where we are today, then I would like to offer guest and audience comment, and then we're gonna have a conversation around unassigned fund balance.
Okay, so I wanted to just walk through everything, so I just went back and, so here's where we're at right now. The Board of Selectmen budget started at 34 million. Took 100,000 from Board of Ed, 11,000 from the lakes. And then I, just so I didn't get lost, 75,000 from Board of Ed for HR and moved it to shared services. You've budgeted 7,500 in contingency representing the SRO. Reduced, I should say fire department, sorry, reserves by 20,000. Capital was reduced by 475,000, and just to review that for you, we reduced by 150,000 in road materials, pavement and shim overlay, 225,000 for the Board of Ed, and we shifted 100,000 to Beth's operating from FEMA. And then there's the additional 100 for public works. So right now you're at a budget of 33,574,866, which represents a 4.6% tax increase or a 1.12 mill rate increase.
And just to clarify for me again, because I have my list now, would you check and give me the numbers that you did for Beth, please? The shifting on the Department of Public Works, the 400, the.
Yes, certainly. I can actually put it
475.
on the screen if you like. So if we're looking here, this is how I did FEMA. The FEMA portion of the damage is 2.1 million. And then we repurposed 400,000 of that 5 here. The other 100's in operating. And we repurposed bone mill. So that's how we get to this. We're using those numbers. And then if we scroll up here, just to show you the reduction, the 500,000's gone. And we took 50,000 from the pavement shim overlay, that's why it's 78,000. And 100,000 from road materials, that's why it's 64,000.
And you also got the road project, all right, good. So I see how you did this one. Bring up that summary again, please. Board of Ed was where on that? What about the driveway at the Board of Ed?
That's part of capital. So just to give you a take, this 475 is that's how you get that 475 reduction in capital. That's what represents that.
And then the money for the FEMA was directly applied to savings on the 500,000 or
Right. So that's
directly
why
applied to the FEMA.
when you look at this worksheet, I just wanted to break it down. So I showed FEMA in the town. Break it out. Who's paying for what? I thought that was a cleaner way to break it out and know how it all falls in place.
And we've already expended money. We didn't talk about this, and I want to get too far into it. I just wanted to get a sense. We've already spent about $200,000 for storm damage. So we should be expecting
We'll be
about
getting some
150?
money back, but don't forget, in tracking it and segregating it from all our costs, I've been charging it to that emergency management storm line. So we'll have to replenish that to make that whole, and then if there's any excess, we can apply it towards future FEMA.
So possibly even lowering this obligation.
Or helping us towards Neptune or.
This is true, I forgot about those. We got a budget for those too. All right, that might cover the cost of that. Okay,
Well, obviously, we'll keep you informed as we move forward for that, how it all washes out with FEMA.
all right, now can you go, so this is great. Why don't you save that so we have this to refer later. Why don't we, any questions on any of the math? We good with all of it?
I'm fine.
Sir?
This is not a whole big deal. Somewhere there was $20,000. Oh, I see it, sorry. My mistake. It's too late in the day for me to think.
Keep me on
It
my
is.
toes, Harvey.
Well, it's a little late for all, so we gotta check each other. There's no question about it. You're good?
I'm good.
You're good too, Tom?
Yeah, of the 4.6% increase, how much of it is due to FEMA?
$4, 4.6% tax increase.
I think you have to look at it differently. How much is the budget increase? Because the tax is another matter, right? It's how much is the budget?
Taxes-
Budget, yeah, right.
Yeah, so
That's what I meant.
that's the budget increase is 6.38%. But just to give you a frame of reference, because we've talked about the increase to debt service. I want to subtract that debt service out and give you the flavor, because we have money coming in, that what the true cost is for debt, for the true impact. You're at 3.3% taking out the debt for this building. Because don't forget, the money's going out here, but it's coming in here and it's washing out. So you're at a net 3.3% budget increase.
Any other questions?
I don't quite understand that. So the cost of this building, the debt service of this building, is about 1.3% of the tax increase? Or,
Yeah, so you have a tax increase of 2 million, or a budget increase, not a tax increase.
budgeting?
The total increase of $2 million, and of that, 981,677 is debt service. But we have money to pay for that.
We've already reserved that
We've
money,
already
so one
reserved for
offsets
that.
the other.
So just maybe as a refresher might be easier, if you look at, we had debt service here, which you see the increase, but if you come down on the revenue side, and I know I'm scrolling fast, but once I get there, transfers in from other funds, here's $981,000 coming in to offset that.
So since we had budgeted the monies before, that's why that's, even though that number has been anticipated, the money is,
And there's no
It's
way
covered.
I can't take them both off, they net each other out, but I can't take them off the expense and revenue sheets, we have to reflect them.
So we're gonna go to the vote right now, in this moment. We're gonna go to the voters and ask for a 4.6% increase.
absolutely not. So what we're doing is we're going to make sure you understand the numbers, and then we're gonna open up the guest and audience comment, and then we're gonna have a conversation of looking at fund balance. Okay, so, do anybody else have numbers questions?
Well, did you want to revisit the question, what was it, the liaison representation that you had for fire department?
Yes, fire department, thank you very much for the call. They're going to work with the 54,000, if we decide to keep it with the $54,000 increase, they're gonna meet the need with part-time, hiring more part-timers,
Okay, so you're
part-time career officers.
satisfied with that?
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you for bringing that up, that did come up before. Good, anyone else? Okay, shifting gears a little bit, this is our time for guest and audience comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
Yes, I would. Thank you all for being here today. I have 3 items of interest, and I don't know that they make any difference in dollars and cents. One was on the lakes. I did sit through the lakes presentation. I don't remember exactly
Sorry.
what all 3 of the lakes had geared for carryover money. I know the Moodus lakes, they're hoping to purchase the harvester. I don't know if the carryover money is,
That's all out of reserves, that's not impacted at all.
I just said I don't remember it all. That was all, not all I remembered about the lake, something about it being in Hayward. I didn't remember what, I don't think anybody was from vacation that night. Listening to the conversation regarding the tree cutting and the log, it does sound easy to have a logger come in and pick the logs up from the side of the road. Their crane can't be within 10 feet of the power lines. Our bucket trucks can't be within 10 feet of the power lines either. We also would run into, from a public safety, where the trees are dropped, they would then need either an escort or a police officer, traffic possibly on a curve or on a hill. So that might slow that down or make it a danger. And as Beth had said the other night, should that contractor reach over, knock somebody's stone wall over, or have a tree come over on their property, the town's gonna get a bunch of phone calls.
It died.
Or possibly on the hook for some other damage. My thought as a resident, and the town's liability or the town's risk, is I've lived here 30 years, I see the dead trees on my road, I see the dead trees all over town. It's something that's going to happen, it's maybe an informational type. Where if the town is making a good faith effort, no matter how fast or how slow, based on our funds and availability, that's all you can do, the rest is Mother Nature. Trying to make a priority, you're getting the ones that are hanging over the road where it's easy to do, but there is no, I don't see an extra burden on the town for that, in my own opinion. as far as the other towns that aren't putting as much money in, maybe they have larger public works departments, maybe they don't do some of the things we do, the roadside mowing that puts two people out of commission for the summer. So I'm sure there's many factors why they maybe didn't have to put as much, or maybe they weren't hit with the gypsy mob that as we were in areas of town. Just a few thoughts in my head. Lastly, we go back to public safety. As a person who was a part-time employee for 6 years, did work on the budget, did work with the former first selectman and the current. On the positive side of things, I've always advocated that it would be much safer if we had 3 people on duty during the day. Safer when there's a fire. It's safer when 2 of the paid staff have to transport out of town. And we had presented options for that over the years. I made handout sheets on how we were doing it with the former staff that we had. We had 1 full-timer and 6 part-timers. And I kept running the number of part-time hours up to expand the coverage, and it was always less because we were saving in benefits. So last year at this time, we were told that we could staff with 2 full-timers, and the budget was cut by $17,000 from the year previous. And so that previous budget had been 132, and that allowed for a sizable amount of hours. So with the 150 that's being allocated approximately for salary this year, 1 full-timer and part-timers, you can greatly expand the coverage. And
May I interrupt you? I'm very curious about what you just said, so, because it addressed what he was asking.
that's why I'm
So your understanding, based on your hard knowledge as a subject matter expert, is that it was more cost effective to have more part-timers or just expand the capacity? Okay, I just want to be clear on that. And that's the direction we seemingly are going with what they proposed today.
And that's what Board of Selectmen proposes, in keeping with the 1 full-timer and part-timer.
All right.
So with the expanded salary, you can then expand.
The part-time, though, that's the best course of action.
The full-timer used to start at 5 or 6 in the morning, and that is the key time. 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and you don't feel well. That is probably the highest medical call.
Thank you.
But something that's come to light over the recently, and I think this is more for some of the questions that you had earlier. Probably for the last, or ever since I started as a part-timer, as a resident, I always thought it curious that the paid staff would transport the ambulance and not receive anything for it. So, in reality,
That's gonna
the ambulance
change.
didn't have to pay its 2 technicians the $100 of the stipend for that call.
Yeah.
We were being paid anyway, so it really wasn't an extra cost to the town. But I always thought the town should get that money. I always thought there should have been a better agreement. And I think that's what we're working towards finally. But these are things I have been talking about, real dollars and cents for the last 5 and 6 years. Apparently, wall or something. Nobody seemed to take that as fact. Now, last year was a rapid increase in the number of transports for the paid staff, approximately 100. We'll use 100, there's 100 and a few extra. Some were with both paid staff, some were with 1. And as all career fire departments are, they're all moving to EMS. EMS is the bulk of all fire department activity right now. So, of 100, say 100 transports, that's less than 1 a day average. You're gonna always have a day in the fire service where you don't have enough manpower to cover what you need. There are also days where you're all set. So at less than 1 transport a day, if our paid staff is out of town for 2 hours, it's really not that bad. And in all of my logbook and all my data keeping, the average for the calls for the paid staff is 3 EMS calls to 1 fire. So we were in essence, we had already acknowledged that the paid staff is there to provide EMS coverage and in a little less fashion, fire coverage. just for your information there. Now, the ambulance association is, as they said, working towards, they're gonna go to a staffing agency, and they're going to attempt, I think, to hire some of their own people for the areas of the schedule where they don't have the coverage. Reasons for the lack of volunteers and the change in the atmosphere is bigger than either organization can really speak to alone. There are some personnel conflicts, allegiances, and there were always multiple factions even within the ambulance association itself. And I would say both volunteer organizations as a whole do a tremendous job. People are out here, you just don't hand a fireman a pair of boots and a coat anymore. They're required to go to the training. The EMS people have mandated training, HIPAA training, chart training, everything else. So that part of it is a burden. But some of what's going on here has been a manufactured crisis. And I think, as I spoke to the Board of Selectmen the other night, if the organizations work together, they'll work through this. I think the residents will be better served. Capital reserves, you've already addressed the reduction in them. And I'm not going to say what kind of fire truck they have to buy down the road, but they did indicate to us last year that the next one would cost less. We can use that money for the renovation. Nothing goes down in price in the fire service. It's an average of 8 to 10% year increase. So there wasn't, how do you want to say, an innocent mistake. Everything was going up. They just wanted that money for the renovation, and it was used. Just be cautious in that. I believe that was it. I just wanted to let Mr. Gelson and the rest of you know that I think the plan moving forward for the next year has a good opportunity of being successful. The salary that's been presented, and I had my little chart. I had expanded out part-time coverage up to 80 hours a week, and it would still be below 132,000, or 150,000, I should say. I think it's a good move to work for both departments in the town, and I think in the next year that we should see some improvement in those organizations and in the responses, and the ambulance, in essence, has the money to pay for the staffing because they do bill, and I would hope that the agreement they reach benefits the town in some small fashion. They use the paid staff. But if our paid staff isn't doing EMS calls, we would really have to wonder, do we even need paid staff? For one fire call, days, you would have to wonder that. So we expect them to continue calls as probably a majority of their work. And to agree with Mr. Dutch, our volunteer organizations have a long tradition here. And even though we are now a combination, fire department, the bulk of the system is volunteer, and in working in coordination should benefit everybody without an undue burden on our budget.
Thank you for your insights and your comments. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else that wants to make any observation or comment? Okay, with that, we're going to close the guest and audience comment. Okay. Cindy, pull up our magic spreadsheet. So here we are with what we have sifted and looked at and honed through. And now we have a budget that and a mill rate that does not include using any unassigned fund balance. And I want to just refresh your memory of what we've done in the past and our policy that we as a board elected last year. And that is, we will look at that balance. We have a range of what's acceptable And we can use that range to maybe offset a tax increase and minimize the mill rate increase. So my proposal, and I was really happy last year, and I have to actually credit, I think, this modern building and those that put it together for giving us the ability to have a screen where we can do this in real time and discuss it among ourselves. In the past, it would be going back and forth and haggling a little bit and going back and forth, and it would take a while. So with that all said, here's what we have. Without any assignment of our fund balance, it's a 1.12 mil increase. Cindy, will you share us where we fall in that range of the unassigned fund balance?
So we ended last year at 16, I believe it's 16.2%, but 16% of our fund balance to our budget. And looking at this year's projections for expenditures and revenues and taking into account where the state indicates they're gonna fund us, I don't believe you had budgeted this year to use 100,000 in fund balance. You may use a little of it. Right now, you're looking at the break-even point between revenue and expenditures. You've got the building department excelling in its revenue, and you have the state shortfalling us in a few places. But I think all in all, in unexpended monies like last year, you had 1% more in revenue, 1% less in expense. I think your fund balance is going to remain stable, and I don't see you using the 100,000 you put in as a budget balancer last year.
Okay. And then remind us what the range is that we've set as a board for our policy.
8 to 13.
So just by discussion purposes, it's not my intent to go to 13. Can you give me a dollar value of that 3% of what we have? Because this, in essence, falls within our fund balance budget. And I just want to kind of reiterate it. If 13 is the top line, and we're at 16, that's where I came out with 3%. Is that clear? Yeah.
Let me just pull up the audit. I should have brought a copy with me.
The other challenge is this is a very difficult, it's kind of an estimate, because it is an estimate, because we do the reconciliation of the fund balance once a year with the audit that occurs June 30 of the year prior. So we're working with, that's the reason why last year when we did it, we had to do it based on the information we had, and we ended up getting back, having a little more money than we projected. So to come out within $100,000 and not using it, that was pretty accurate, pretty good numbers overall. I'm really pleased with
So
that.
our June 30 fund balance was $4,941,533, or 16.2% of the general fund.
4 million, just, I want to get that number clear.
4,941,533.
Okay. And if we're using, and what is 13% of that, of the operating budget?
So we were to base it off of what the proposed budget is right now, which is usually do it on the prior year, but to be conservative, it would be 44.4 million. So, and this is what we ended last year with. The variance between what we finished last year with at 16.2. This number represents 13% of the 33,574.
Being the conservative person that I am, I want to, if I may, ask you to show us, well, I'd like to show the board what these numbers look like in $100,000 increments, and then I'd open it up for discussion, okay? So when I say 100, that would mean that you're going to go in your formula and just subtract out $100,000 tax revenue? Is that you know what I'm saying? I just want to use fund balance in 100,000 increments. And apply it to your equation to get us to the mill rate.
I know we did this last year and I couldn't find the worksheet. So if you were to use.
So you have your column there that says mill rate increase, it's in that formula that you want to do it. Or whatever the,
Oh, we wanted to use, oh, okay, yeah, I had already done that for you, okay. So we went and used 100,000 of fund balance, sorry, Bill, it's a little slow at this point. Have 101. If you wanna go to 90, I was playing with it a little while you were talking. Wanted to use 115,000. Increase of 0.99.
okay. Do you guys want to see other numbers in there? You want her to put other numbers in? Do you want to see a number?
Well, even if you take 100,000 or 120,000 or whatever out of the 576 that you got there, you're still going to be more than 13%. I was saying the range that we want to.
We could take up to 576 and still be in our range. We could take all 500.
I wouldn't
Right.
recommend that, but yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is, a long way around is saying is, if we think that the 8 to 13 are good deals, then being way over 13 isn't cool.
Agree.
And so suppose you said, no, let's do 200 grand.
Let's see what 200 grand
Let's look at
looks like.
200,000.
You don't
Is that okay?
forget-
Yeah, no, I mean, that's
Are
the,
you with us on this logic?
it's the beauty of computer. You could do this cool.
You're at 0.89.
What were we last year? 0.89, right?
No, last year you were,
About a half a
0.91.
mil.
no, you were like 0.16 or something. You went from. Look it up. Last year you went from 2958 to 2966. You were at 0.08 last year. But you didn't have all of these.
We had reval, we had a bigger
Factors.
grand list, and we didn't have, I mean, look at this, we're budgeting $700,000 that we were able to do some work through the capital, but, you know, we had this big road storm damage, so.
That's why I asked the question, what percentage of the increase is due to the storm damage and the tree cutting? So the folks understand that this is kind of an unusual year.
Well, if it's 700,000,
It's 750 actually, right? That's our, it's more actually if you look at the 3.7, but in this budget, it was 750,000 that we used.
% of the total budget request.
That's right.
So one of the things we certainly could convey in the citizens guide is, you know,
Right.
some of these enhancements. So if you're looking at that's such a, here's, to look at it this way, you have this much is your increase. Debt service. We'll just say 700,000 for FEMA for now.
Well, 750 though, really?
I think it's 7, but that's all right, but we'll use
Oh,
750.
all right. What are the real numbers?
Right, we ended up going with 2.8 on her numbers, it is 700, my mistake.
That's right, you're right. Okay.
You're looking at the total overall increase. increase after FEMA and debt service is $330,000.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to taxes, so taxes is an increase of $1 million. So under the same, debt service isn't included in there, so if you take in factoring us doing FEMA, it'd be a $318,000 increase if we weren't doing FEMA. So that's a good point to convey in the citizens.
Right.
Okay, so we started with 200. Is there another number
You've got to keep writing.
you want to say? What do you, it's, basically I'm opening it up to you guys. I want to know what you're thinking. Is 200 the right number? Is 250 the right number? Is 100 the right number? I'm getting a sense. We know to keep within our guidelines and to stay financially solvent, it's 13%, and that leaves a difference of 500 and change, 576. So what number do we think of that? Do we anticipate any contingencies happening next year or any cash flows coming in that we may not get either?
You need wiggle room for FEMA, and you don't know what the state's gonna do.
Alright. So, being the conservative, taking the conservative approach, what I think I hear you saying is, don't be too aggressive on this, don't go right up to the limit. What are you thinking as board members? Todd, I'd like to hear what your thought is.
The limit is 576?
Yeah.
I say we go halfway.
Okay, your thoughts? And let's just for argument's sake say that's 250.
Yeah, okay.
What are you thinking?
That would be fine by me.
Try it.
Would you put that in?
Just as a reminder, when people say use of fund balance, clearly it's all it is you know you have money in your checkbook and you're gonna use some of it. And we
Right, because
know-
all the other monies that we have reserved, those are our savings. This is just, we got.
This is just a budget. I hate the word plug, if you will. It's a budget balancer. And if you don't necessarily use it all, that would take you down to 0.84.
And you had shared with me the CPI number last year was 2.8 something?
2.8.
I'm kind of leaning to the 250, but I'd like to see what 2.8 would be of that number. Is that possible? And you could just plug 300 in, I think, if you
Yeah,
want.
300, yeah.
Yeah.
That I was gonna go calculate.
No, you don't go to that level of trouble. I don't want to make it exactly. That's impossible to do all the time. I just want to see a number. So that doesn't seem to do a lot. It's going to be almost the whole 5 to get us to that point. And we have the extraordinary occurrences.
I think, I mean, it's a big number, but I think it's in how you sell it. FEMA, school security officer, things in there. The budget would be, you guys would have been done a long time ago if you didn't have to worry about some of those big things.
Correct.
And the other thing to factor in here is how much of that is the trees too. So you've got,
150 on that.
no, that's the increase.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. We have a lot of issues to deal with this year. So in the day-to-day operation, it isn't going up by much at all. It's these debt service is the eye catcher, but the add in FEMA and the trees, the big bill. So you're right, it's how we sell it. We're being conservative financially. At the same time, we're addressing these critical needs and efficiently. There it is, 3.4% increase.
That was using 300,000. Is that the number
Yeah.
we want to go to now? Or do you want to stay at 250?
Well, the trees plus the SRO is about that, right?
and put the SRO in there too, yeah. So you're at 300,000 right now.
I think that's about halfway on the limit, on the guidelines, so I think 300,000 is in my opinion, is where we wanna go and stay.
Your thoughts? Your thoughts?
Yeah, that would work. Every dollar more than 16%, right? Or than 13% is money that people have coughed up. And now you're gonna ask them to cough up more on top of that? So I wouldn't feel bad about 300,000.
Right.
Not,
I mean, it's
not
like.
trying to push
like
us
what-
too hard, but do you,
Like we keep, give me more. Well, how come you didn't spend what I gave you?
So if you were to use the 300,000 based on last year's monies, put it to this year's budget, the proposed budget, you're at 13.8% in projected. You're
well,
still
that's
well-
just at the top end of what we want, but it's not too bad. I mean, if it's 16, it's considered, people will look
You
at
get
that.
over 15 people,
Right. But 13.8 is not,
you're not decimating it by any means.
Right. Our instructors at CCM would appreciate it, not scold us.
okay. Do we have any further discussion on this matter? Do we feel comfortable using of the fund balance, using 300,000, on the unassigned fund balance, using 300?
Hold up the motions you used last year, you made a separate vote on fund balance, you don't necessarily need it, but I can plug in the numbers for your motion once you have consensus.
Do we have consensus? I think so.
You want a motion on fund balance or just a motion on the whole budget?
Let's do both motions, because I think some people object to us using fund balance, and we made it part of our policy. I just want to make sure they're clear. We looked at this seriously.
Yeah, I'll plug the rest. And can I throw a caveat out? I'm 99% positive with all of this, but Monday morning, I'll put it all in the accounting system. If I find an issue, I'll let you all know. I'm pretty confident, but we've been flying fast and furious here. Throw that caveat out.
All right, and in the event that should occur, we'll call another meeting together and we'll decide how we have to deal with it. Is that okay? But for now, we're gonna I'd like to have someone make this motion and second it, and we vote on it. And if that's positive, then we've completed our task at hand. Somebody wanna read it?
I move that we utilize the 300,000 of the general fund to offset the 2019, that wrong?
No, I have a typo, and they're making fun of me across the table. Go ahead, sorry.
No, my pen is dying, and it's the second one. I'm on Harvey's pen.
My apologies, Tom. I thought it was because I misspelled your name.
No.
That's all right.
But you can't read it because you got the.
I know what you mean. I move that we utilize the $300,000 of the general fund to offset the 2019-2020 budget.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Come on, pen.
Well, I'm typing it down, so at least you got this. I'll email it
This
to
is
you.
how I'm writing.
All in favor?
I went
Aye.
to two.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, need another motion here to, someone want to read that one?
I move to present to the public hearing scheduled for April the 10th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the Nathan Hale Wright High School, a total budget of $574,866, based on the grand list as of October 1st, 2018, of
That page.
$879,144,920. The budget will require a mill rate increase of 0.78 mils, or a 3.4% tax increase.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Before we conclude, we are not having a meeting next week, so let's just review that among ourselves. We've accomplished our task. Our next meeting will be April 10th. We will not be having a finance board meeting on April 8th. Instead, we'll bundle it all in together on that date of April 10th.
So the next time we meet is April 10th.
Correct.
Thank you.
With the permission of the board, I would like to put the appropriation for the school driveway on that meeting, if I can get it from bond council in time, if not for your mini meeting,
That's super.
so that they can get that started for the city.
All right. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Let's go.
Aye.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you, each of you.
Thank you.
The amount of energy
Sorry.
you put in.
That belongs
I
to
keep a
Mr.
spare,
Dutch.
but I didn't get time to pull it out. It was in my pocket.
Oh, don't worry about it.
I'm gonna put this
You
away
just
for
owe me a
Monday
new
to
pen.
make sure-
I'll mail you one.
Cindy, outstanding work. Really, really grateful for your efforts.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very grateful for your stuff.
That one we
I meant you
can
two for hanging in there with us all these meetings, plus you had done yours, so it's double time. And Linda, thank you for being here too.
The ability to shove numbers around like that really is helpful.
What we just did.
Yeah, because
Yeah, did we turn off our,
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know how.
Linda, how do you turn it off?
thank you guys.
System off?
Did you shut the tape off first? Because if you didn't, it'll just keep running and right over everything.
I don't think anybody touched anything.
How do you?
I'm more afraid